Chapter 2459, Cellmate with a Glass Heart, 3. At first, Leng Ruoxue had a bewildered look on her face. Later, Jing Tsang translated for her and she found out that this woman was the daughter of the city lord of Chuan City, Lu Rong, who was secretly known as the tyrant of Chuan City. When they arrived at the cell, Leng Ruoxue was not too satisfied with the dark environment, but she still cooperated and led the evil demon and the others into the cell. Lu Rong, who was closing the cell door, was even more satisfied when she saw how cooperative the other party was. After Lu Rong left, Feng Luo looked at Leng Ruoxue in confusion and asked, "Master, why do we have to be so obedient?" Ever since he found out about Leng Ruoxue's identity, he had changed to calling her master, even though he had not officially recognized her as his master. "Don't you want to know why we were caught?" Leng Ruoxue asked back with a smile. "Ah." Feng Luo didn't know how to answer. However, his master's willingness to go to jail in order to know why he was caught also made him quite speechless. Was master very bored? Feng Luo couldn't help but secretly guess. "Master, is that ugly monster planning to attack us?" A peacock said very cleverly. Leng Ruoxue glanced at him and thought to herself, "You've found out the truth." According to Tsang, that woman had indeed taken a fancy to Feng Luo and those peacocks, and he had wanted to know how that woman had planned to get Feng Luo and the others, so he had cooperated and been caught. However, he couldn't say this out loud. Otherwise, that little fellow Feng Luo would definitely be furious. Hee hee. Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly as she looked at the peacocks. The peacock clan was really full of beautiful men. Any peacock that took on a human form was so beautiful that it made people gasp in admiration. As Leng Ruoxue was fantasizing in her heart, a soft sigh came from the cell next door. "Ai. If you're caught, don't even think about leaving." Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue turned around and saw that the person who spoke was also a young man. She couldn't help but ask curiously, "Why were you caught?" "I don't know. I was in the middle of exchanging phoenix fruits with someone else and was caught by accident. I heard that the guy who exchanged phoenix fruits with me had stolen something from the city lord's mansion. So, he was brought directly into the city lord's mansion on the day he was caught. Woo, my phoenix fruit. We haven't even completed our deal." The more the young man thought about it, the more depressed he became. When Feng Luo heard the young man's words, he couldn't help but ask worriedly, "What did the person who exchanged the phoenix fruit with you look like? Male or female?" "He's a male, very handsome." The young man said honestly. "Master, the one he mentioned might be a member of our Phoenix clan. Let's go to the city master's mansion and have a look. If he's really from the Phoenix clan, we have to find a way to get him out." Feng Luo anxiously transmitted his voice to Leng Ruoxue. "Are you sure?" Leng Ruoxue asked. 80% of them are from the Phoenix clan. The phoenix fruit is the most precious fruit of the phoenix kind. Except for the members of the phoenix kind, no one else has a chance to get it, unless our phoenix kind is willing to trade with them. Feng Luo said honestly. "Since that's the case, let's find an opportunity to sneak into the city lord's mansion and take a look," Leng Ruoxue said after some thought. "When are you going?" Feng Luo asked, burning with anxiety. "In the dead of the night." Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly. That was the best time to do bad things. Late at night? Feng Luo was a little dumbfounded. Wouldn't that still take a long time? They had just had breakfast not long ago. By the time it was late at night, would the suspected Phoenix clansman's innocence be lost? He was really worried. Seeing through Feng Luo's thoughts, Leng Ruoxue turned to look at her cellmate in the cell next door and asked, "How long has it been since the man who wanted to trade the phoenix fruit with you was brought into the city lord's mansion?" "It's been so many days," the young man said after thinking carefully. "I'm finished." Feng Luo thought to herself, it's been so many days, her innocence must have been lost. In fact, after the peacock's reminder, he immediately thought of the purpose of capturing their woman. However, with his master around, he was not worried about his safety. If there was really danger, he could just enter his master's space. But now, he was a little worried about the man who seemed to be from the Phoenix clan. For any man, it was unbearable to be forced to lose his innocence. Feng Luo seemed to have already foreseen the tragic fate of that man. As he thought about it, his eyes turned red and tears welled up in his eyes. Leng Ruoxue took a look and jumped in shock. Was this child worried about his situation? Don't be afraid. I'm here. I won't let that woman touch a single hair on you. Leng Ruoxue quickly consoled him. When he heard her say this, Feng Luo burst into tears. Leng Ruoxue was dumbfounded. What? What was going on? Feng Luo, this child. Was he scared? AI. That woman was the daughter of the city lord. Unruly, overbearing, and unreasonable. A helpless sigh accompanied by Feng Luo's crying could be heard again. Leng Ruoxue was speechless. Thanks. Why was this person adding fuel to the fire? Can't you see that your child is crying? After hearing what the man said, Feng Luo cried even harder. Upon seeing this, Leng Ruoxue's icy dagger-like eyes shot towards the cell next door. However, perhaps her neighbor's reaction was too slow, for he did not sense that danger was coming. I won't be able to get out easily. The man continued to speak. Leng Ruoxue couldn't take it any longer. She immediately roared, "You shut up." This time, the young man finally reacted and looked at Leng Ruoxue with a face full of fear. He had been shouted at. In fact, he was so talkative just because he wanted to find someone to chat with. He had been locked up for several days, and he had been the only one in the empty cell. He had been lonely and unbearable. However, after being yelled at by Leng Ruoxue, he became much more obedient. That woman was so fierce. Tears welled up in the young man's eyes as well. However, he was not Feng Luo. Leng Ruoxue would not feel sorry for him. She glared at the young man before turning around to coax Feng Luo. Little Luo, don't cry. Didn't I say that I would protect you? What are you afraid of? Leng Ruoxue was a little vexed. Did this little fellow not believe that she could protect him? Look at how sad she was crying. I'm afraid that the person who was brought into the city lord's mansion will be bullied. Feng Luo sobbed and spoke the truth. Ah. Little Luo, that person might not have anything to do with you. Leng Ruoxue consoled him. How did she not know that Feng Luo also had times when he was sentimental and sad? This had nothing to do with him at all. I have a feeling that that person should be one of my clansmen. Feng Luo said in a low voice. Don't think about it. Well, go take a look tonight. Leng Ruoxue coaxed. Yes. Feng Luo nodded. In the following waiting time, Feng Luo was like an ant on a hot pan, pacing back and forth in the cell uneasily. The peacocks were already dizzy from his antics. However, they knew that Feng Luo wasn't in a good mood, so no one dared to ask him to stop spinning. They could only endure it. It wasn't easy for her to sneak into the middle of the night, when the moon was dark and the wind was strong. Leng Ruoxue took out a thin iron wire and pried open the cell door lock in 2 or 3 moves. Feng Luo was the first to run out when he saw this. After giving everyone a look, Leng Ruoxue and the rest were about to leave when their neighbor called out to them, "Save me. Don't leave me alone." The young man didn't expect the woman in front of him to have a way to open the lock. At this time, he didn't care about his fear and directly asked for help. Lower your voice. Leng Ruoxue was furious, but she still opened the lock for him. After the young man came out, he thanked Leng Ruoxue profusely and even said that he wanted to repay her kindness. Leng Ruoxue only shot him a cold glance, and the young man immediately shut his mouth. He looked at her with an aggrieved expression. As long as you keep your mouth shut, I'll consider it as you've repaid my kindness. Leng Ruoxue said in an unpleasant tone. This man was too noisy. Ugh! The young man was speechless. He didn't know when he had become so unpopular. This hurt him quite a bit. My name is Qing Mu, and I'm from the Qing family. I'll always remember your kindness in saving my life. If you need my help in the future, just come to the Qing family to find me. Although she was not well liked, Qing Mu, who felt hurt, felt that she still needed to let them know her identity. Maybe these people would change their opinion of her. Qing Mu's wish was beautiful, but the truth was absolutely cruel. After hearing the young man's name, Uncle Long sized him up seriously. In the end, he said helplessly, as a member of the Qing family, you can still be arrested. It looks like you're quite useless. Qing Mu burst into tears. How could these people hurt other people's glass hearts like this? In fact, what he wanted to say was, weren't you all caught too? However, he didn't dare to say this in front of that fierce woman. At this moment, he heard Lin Ruoxue agree, it's quite useless. He even claimed to be a member of the Qing family. After knowing the young man's identity, not only did Lin Ruoxue not think highly of him, she even looked down on him. They were caught on purpose because they didn't want to reveal their identities. However, she believed that even if the man in front of her revealed his identity, he wouldn't believe it. In reality, Lin Ruoxue had found out the truth. Before Qing Mu was arrested, he had indeed said that he was a member of the Qing family. Unfortunately, Lu Rong did not believe him at all. Who asked Qing Mu to not have any evidence at all? As such, he could only be in for a tragedy. However, he deeply felt that being locked up was definitely not comparable to the contempt and blow these people in front of him were giving him. He felt his glass heart break into pieces. Ignoring Qing Mu's worry, Lin Ruoxue rolled her eyes at him and brought the evildoer and the rest out of the cell. Before they left, they knocked out the guard who was guarding the cell and stuffed him back into the cell. Her movements were as smooth as flowing water. Qing Mu was dumbfounded and couldn't even care about her. These people were obviously repeat offenders. Look at how skilled he was. Qing Mu secretly thought to himself. Seeing that Lin Ruoxue and the rest were about to run out of sight, he hurriedly gave chase. Chapter 2460, Seeking a Sugar Daddy. 1. Wait for me. Qing Mu was panting heavily. After finally catching up to Lin Ruoxue and the rest, who knew that they would suddenly increase their speed. Now, the distance between him and the other party had widened again. Helplessly, he finally could not help but call out. Shuer, that guy is following us. The demon saw the other party's stubbornness from the corner of his eyes and a trace of displeasure flashed across his face as he reminded. Don't mind him. Lin Ruoxue said indifferently. She pulled the evildoer along and gave Uncle Long, Feng Luo, and the peacock a look. The few of them started to speed up again. When Qing Mu saw the other party's speed, he was dumbfounded. Woo! How could they be like this? He had already told them to wait, so why would the other party turn a blind eye to it? They were really disloyal. After all, they had been fellow inmates for a period of time. He felt wronged. However, Lin Ruoxue could not care less about what he was thinking. They could not wait to get rid of this shadow. After walking for a long time, Feng Luo turned back and saw that Qing Mu's figure was no longer behind him. He asked curiously, Master, why don't we wait for him? He looks very scared. Wait for him? It was too troublesome. That guy is from the Qing family. Although he's been locked up by the daughter of the city governor of Chuan City, he'll definitely find a way to ask the Qing family for help, so we don't need to care about him. Lin Ruoxue said disapprovingly. Oh. Yes, Feng Luo replied. He no longer bothered about this. To him, the most important thing now was to confirm whether the person who had the phoenix fruit that Qing Mu had mentioned was a member of the Phoenix clan. After walking for a while, Lin Ruoxue was surprised to find that they seemed to be lost. Ugh! This was not a good sign. Lin Ruoxue was depressed. I've finally found you guys. Sob. It wasn't easy. Just as Lin Ruoxue and the rest were walking around in circles in Chuan City, a voice that they did not want to hear rang out. Lin Ruoxue furrowed her brows and turned to look at Qing Mu, who was still haunting her. She said in an unpleasant tone, why are you looking for us? I want to go to the city lord's mansion with you. I still need to find that person to trade the phoenix fruit. Chengmu said matter-of-factly, her face clearly saying, you guys can forget about getting rid of me. When Leng Ruoxue saw the other party's stance, she felt her head throb. She knew that this guy would be a big problem, but she didn't expect that he would actually stick to them. It was really too hateful. Little Luo, trade a phoenix fruit with him. Leng Ruoxue glanced at Feng Luo and ordered. All right, he said. Feng Luo nodded obediently. Then, she took out a phoenix fruit and handed it to Chengmu. When Chengmu saw this, his eyes immediately widened. He looked at the small fruit in Feng Luo's hand in disbelief, then looked at Leng Ruoxue and thought to himself, it's really a phoenix fruit. Who were these people? Could she also be from the Phoenix clan? Cheng Mu's face was filled with joy. She reluctantly took out a small bottle of pills and handed it to Feng Luo. Chengmu quickly kept the phoenix fruit into her storage ring. Thanks, you can leave now. Don't follow us. Seeing that the transaction had been completed, Leng Ruoxue immediately asked him to leave. However, Chengmu was not so easy to get rid of. It was not easy to find a suspected Feng clansman, so how could he bear to leave? He had to find a way to build a good relationship with these people. Of course, it would be best if he could take in a phoenix as his beast pet. Only then would he be able to return to the Cheng family with his head held high. As soon as she thought of this, Cheng Mu's heart suddenly felt a little light. After thinking about it, Chengmu said with a thick face, I still have to go with you to the city lord's mansion. When she heard this, Leng Ruoxue was slightly enraged. Damn it! So what if he was really entangled with her? Then go your way, don't follow us. Leng Ruoxue's beautiful eyes were spitting fire as she spoke to Chengmu in an unpleasant tone. No. I saw that you seemed to be walking in circles and seemed to have lost your way, so let me lead the way for you. There was a maze formation in Chuan City. At night, the maze formation would be activated automatically. People who were not familiar with the road conditions would definitely get lost. Hee hee. I'm guessing this is your first time here. Chengmu said with a smile. He didn't take Leng Ruoxue's cold face seriously at all, and his mental endurance was also extremely strong. Leng Ruoxue saw his reaction and admitted defeat. Damn it, if he wasn't a member of the Cheng family, she probably wouldn't have been so conflicted about whether to knock this guy out. You lead the way. Seeing that Leng Ruoxue didn't respond, the demon smiled. All right. I'm very familiar with the city lord's mansion, so I'll definitely bring you there safely. Chengmu said excitedly when he heard that someone in the group was willing to accept him. The demon nodded and gave Leng Ruoxue a consoling look. He then let Chengmu lead the way while he and the rest followed behind. Sure enough, Chengmu was very familiar with the roads in Chuan City. After a few turns, he brought Leng Ruoxue and the rest to a tall courtyard wall. He pointed at the wall and said, this is the city lord's mansion, let's go in from there. I can guarantee that no one will find out. The place Chengmu was pointing at was a small hole that was less than half the height of a person. The hole was just below the wall he was pointing at. Although there were tall weeds covering the hole, it could still be vaguely seen that the hole was indeed connected to the wall. When Leng Ruoxue realized where Chengmu was pointing at, her expression turned ugly. She gritted her teeth and growled, you don't want to live, do you? You actually want us to enter a beast cave. The beast cave here was not a cave for contracted beasts, but a cave for ordinary guards and non-contracted beasts to enter and exit freely. Those beasts looked fierce, but their strength and status were not high. Their existence was nothing more than to scare some small thieves. To powerful masters, they were of no use. However, some families with a bit of status still liked to use them to scare people. At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxue's anger grew even more. She looked at Chengmu with an even more unpleasant expression. She had decided that regardless of whether this guy was a member of the Cheng family or not, she would teach him a lesson. He was really too annoying. However, when Chengmu heard Leng Ruoxue's words, Tears welled up in her eyes. She said with a slightly choked voice, "This is the safest place. We won't be discovered. If we don't go this way, we won't be discovered either," Ling Ruoxue said hatefully. With that, she teleported Ling out of the bracelet and gave Ling a look. Ling immediately cast an invisibility spell on Master and the rest. Then, Ling Ruoxue and the rest left Qingmu and teleported into the courtyard. When Qingmu saw that the person had disappeared, leaving only a small golden snake to stare at her, she was quite surprised. The way the golden snake looked at him also made him somewhat unhappy. It was clearly a gloating gaze. How did they disappear? After hesitating for a while, Qingmu couldn't hold back her curiosity and asked the question in her heart. Chapter 2461, Seeking a Mistress. 2. They've already entered, Ling said with a smile. It had stayed behind to admire this man's expression. Arg! It can't be. Qingmu was dumbfounded. Those people actually left him behind and swaggered in. Was this possible? Qingmu swallowed her saliva and asked shamelessly, "How did they get in? Aren't you afraid of being discovered by the people of the City Lord's mansion? The City Lord's mansion in River City is very heavily guarded. It's okay. I've cast an invisibility spell on them. As long as they don't expose themselves, no one will discover their existence." Ling replied honestly, not afraid of revealing his secret. Sure enough, when Qingmu heard this, he widened his dark, starry eyes in disbelief and looked at the golden snake in front of him. After staring at it for a long time, a shiny liquid that seemed to be saliva flowed out from the corner of his mouth. It was an invisibility spell. He had never heard of such a thing before. He didn't think that there would be such a magical thing in this world, and it was even a skill that belonged to a beastie. Such a good thing was definitely a good helper for plundering and stealing. As he thought of this, he looked at Ling with even more enthusiasm. That fiery gaze almost melted Ling. Ling Chen couldn't help but shiver as he warned, "I'm telling you, little brat of the Qing family, don't you dare have any ideas about me. I'm not someone you can dream about. Otherwise, my master won't let you off. Even your Qing family's ancestor won't be able to save you." Ugh! Qingmu, whose thoughts had been exposed by a little golden snake, quickly said with an embarrassed look, "I'm not interested in you. I'm just too surprised. You're so powerful." Qingmu's eyes sparkled. However, he still felt a little guilty when he said that. For a moment, he did think of taking the golden snake for himself. However, after the snake revealed it, he immediately put that thought out. Those people just now were not to be trifled with, especially when the little snake mentioned his ancestor. He immediately thought that these people were probably from some powerful family. Otherwise, they would not use their ancestor to threaten him. Woo! He was actually threatened by a snake. This fact made Qingmu quite depressed, but he was still very self-aware. After smiling obsequiously, Qingmu thickened his skin and asked, "I also want to go in, can you help me hide my body? As long as you don't have any ideas about me, invisibility is a piece of cake." Ling said with a smile. "I won't have any ideas about you, I promise," Qingmu said gloomily. This little snake had already used his ancestor to threaten him. If he dared to have any ideas about it, wouldn't he be looking for a beating? "That's a good girl," Ling Mani said. Then, he also cast an invisibility spell on Qingmu. However, Qingmu could not see any effect at all and kept asking Ling, "Am I invisible? Is he invisible?" "Hidden. You've hidden yourself. Other than my master and I, no one can see you. Don't worry." Ling was a little annoyed by his question. Damn it, he was doubting its professional skills. However, when it saw the other party's worried expression, it still said what it thought was quite patient. Hearing the little golden snake's repeated assurance, Qingmu finally felt at ease. He directly teleported into the wall. As soon as he appeared, he suddenly saw two tall, fierce, pitch-black beasts less than a meter away from him. The two beasts were staring at him with their bronze-like blood-red eyes. They raised their heads and sniffed at something. Their blood-red eyes were still looking around. He was so scared that he almost broke out in cold sweat. Thanks, ugh. Although these beasts were not very powerful, they were more than enough to deal with cultivators below the God-King level. Coincidentally, he was a cultivator below the God-King level. Sob. Why was he so unlucky? Could it be that he had been discovered by these two beasts the moment he appeared? Cheng Mu was rather depressed. He was so scared that he didn't dare to move, and his face gradually turned pale. Seeing this, Ling whispered into his ear, "Don't be so useless, okay? These big guys won't be able to see you. You really can't see. But why do I feel like they're looking at me?" Cheng Mu's voice trembled a little as she said in a low voice. "That's just an illusion. They really can't see you. Otherwise, they would have pounced on you," Ling said with a smile. Oh. Cheng Mu was a little suspicious of the words of this golden snake. After observing it for a long time without moving, he finally confirmed that the two tall and fierce beasts in front of him really did not have the intention of pouncing on him and biting him. His entire heart was finally at ease. "I'm going to find my master, you're on your own." Seeing that the idiot Qing family had finally recovered, Ling Ziju didn't want to get involved with them anymore after completing the after-sales service. However, at this time, Cheng Mu was not willing to let the other party leave him. He was afraid that the invisibility technique on his body would suddenly disappear. At that time, wouldn't he be like a sheep entering a tiger's mouth? He didn't want to do such a stupid thing. Then, Cheng Mu quickly hugged Ling's small body and said with a fawning expression, "Don't leave me, I need you." "You bastard. You're taking advantage of this young master." Seeing that she was being hugged, Ling was a little angry. Especially after hearing Cheng Mu's mushy words, Ling couldn't stand it and shivered. "This is too mushy, don't you think so?" Moreover, it was a man who said that. Cheng Mu saw that the little golden snake's body had turned from golden to dark yellow. She could tell that she had made the little snake unhappy and quickly added, "I'm not taking advantage of you. I just don't want you to leave me alone. It's so dark here. I'm so scared." Cheng Mu pretended to be pitiful. In his dark, starry eyes, tears were glistening, making Ling quite speechless. After thinking for a long time, Ling couldn't stand the pitiful look of this man and agreed to bring him along to find his master. At this moment, Ling Ruoxue had already found the courtyard where the suspected Feng clansmen were being held under Tsang's guidance. After Ling contacted his master, he directed Cheng Mu to head straight to the courtyard. It was undeniable that Cheng Mu was a person with a good sense of direction. It did not take long for them to arrive at Ling Ruoxue's courtyard to gather with them. Ling Ruoxue, who was waiting for Ling outside the courtyard, saw that Cheng Mu had actually followed her. Her face sank and her mood instantly became unhappy. "Master." Ling didn't notice Ling Ruoxue's displeasure and pounced into his master's arms like a spoiled child. He wrapped his body around her wrist and stayed there. Seeing Ling Aojiao's small appearance, Cheng Mu secretly envied her. When would his beastie be so close to him? He had a beastie, but unfortunately, that beastie didn't even bother with him and often gave him a hard time. He still had to treat that beastie like an ancestor. After all, at critical moments, if that beastie was in a good mood, it would still attack. But most of the time, don't count on that guy. Chapter 2462, Seeking a Mistress. 3. Go in. Ling Ruoxue couldn't be bothered to question why the other party had followed her here like a shadow. After rolling her eyes at Cheng Mu, she brought the demon into the courtyard. As soon as he entered the courtyard, Feng Luo immediately ran towards one of the rooms. However, there were guards standing guard outside the door, so he did not dare to act rashly. He could only turn his head to look at Ling Ruoxue pitifully, the meaning in his eyes was quite obvious. After Ling Ruoxue walked closer, she didn't say a word and immediately knocked out the guard at the door with the demon. Then, she pushed the door open and entered the room. In the room, a handsome man was tied up. At this moment, The man's head was lowered, and he was surrounded by a bleak atmosphere, giving people the feeling that he was in a very low mood. The man had his head lowered and didn't realize that the door was pushed open. Even if he did, he didn't care anymore. At this time, Feng Luo saw the man and ran forward excitedly. He called out excitedly, "Elder Feng Shao." Upon hearing these words, Leng Ruoxue immediately looked up at the handsome man. "Feng Shao. It can't be that coincidental, right?" When he heard someone call out his name, Feng Shao jerked his head up. However, he did not see anyone in front of him. Thinking that he had heard wrongly, Feng Shao immediately lowered his head again. AI. How could anyone here recognize him? It seemed like he was hallucinating because he wanted to be saved so much. Unfortunately, no one could come to save him at this time. The proud him knew that even if he asked for help from the clan, the Phoenix King, who hated him, would not come to save him. As for his own old ancestor, he could not contact him at all. He did not know where the old man had run to. Feng Shao was very worried. Thinking of his recent misfortunes, his mood became even worse. Seeing that Elder Feng Shao was not paying any attention to him, Feng Luo was a little depressed. Helplessly, he could only stretch out his hand to pull on Feng Shao's lapels and said, "Elder Feng Shao, Feng Luo. Don't you recognize me? Feng Luo. Where are you?" When he heard the familiar name, Feng Shao finally reacted again. He raised his head and searched around, but he didn't find Feng Luo's shadow. To be precise, he could only hear the sound but not see the person. Ah! Only then did Feng Luo remember that he was invisible. He turned to look at his master for help. Leng Ruoxue gently stroked Ling's ice-cold skin. Ling understood and removed Feng Luo's invisibility spell. Feng Luo's figure appeared in front of Feng Shao. It really was Feng Luo. Feng Shao was overjoyed, but immediately after, his expression changed and he said nervously, "Little Feng Luo, what are you doing here?" Was he also caught? "No, I didn't. I walked in on my own," Feng Luo said very honestly. "Little Feng Luo, you should quickly leave this place before anyone finds out. There are 2 experts in the city lord's mansion, and I'm not their match. You must not be discovered by them." After hearing Feng Luo's words, Feng Shao hurriedly urged him. He didn't want Feng Luo to be trapped in the city lord's manor like him. "Elder Feng Shao, I'm here to save you." Seeing that he had been driven out, Feng Luo said straightforwardly. "Save me? Little Feng Luo, you're too weak. You can't save me. How about this? If you must save me, then tell the Phoenix Fire forefather that I was captured and let him save me," Feng Shao casually suggested. His purpose was naturally to trick Feng Luo away. He didn't want Feng Luo to end up in the same situation as him. Seeing that Feng Shao obviously didn't believe that he had come to save him, Feng Luo was very worried. After sighing, he said helplessly, "Feng Luo knows his own limits, but my master will definitely be able to save you." "Your master? Lord Lianwu?" Feng Shao's eyes widened and he couldn't help but guess. He knew that Feng Luo must have left the Feng clan with Lord Lianwu, but he didn't expect that Feng Luo would actually call Lord Lianwu master. Could it be that Feng Luo had recognized Lord Lianwu as his master? His heart was full of questions, but after seeing Feng Luo's confident expression, Feng Shao had to admit that if Lord Wu was here, it would indeed be much easier to save him. Who asked him to have such a strong backing? The Lu family wouldn't dare to not give face to the God Lord's manor. However, he didn't have much confidence in his heart. He didn't know if Lord Lianwu would offend the Lu family for him. After all, he didn't have a deep friendship with Lord Lianwu. Seeing his reaction, Leng Ruoxue immediately appeared and smiled. "Feng Shao, right? Feng Hu told me your name and asked me to take care of you." "Ah. You know my family's old ancestor." Hearing this, and seeing Lord Lianwu suddenly appear, Feng Shao was quite surprised and shocked. Regardless of what skill Lord Lianwu and Feng Luo used to make him unable to see them, he just said that his ancestor was very good at pretending to be sick. When did he have a friendship with Lord Lianwu? He really couldn't understand. Not only do we know each other, but we're also very familiar with each other. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. These words successfully caused a confused look to appear on Feng Xiao's face. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue decided to tell the truth. I'm Leng Ruoxue, not some Lord Lianwu. Feng Xiao was petrified. Thanks Qing Mu, who heard Leng Ruoxue reveal her identity, was equally shocked. Leng Ruoxue. This ugly woman was actually the legendary Leng Ruoxue. The Leng Ruoxue that old Grand Madam always mentioned. No wonder she didn't put him in her eyes at all after hearing his identity. No wonder other people's beastie dared to threaten him. Who would dare to provoke a beastie with such a fierce master? Sob. He must hug onto this thick leg. With Leng Ruoxue's support, he believed that his clansmen would not dare to look down on him anymore. Old Grand Madam would also not scold him all the time. The moment such a thought appeared, Cheng Imyu's mind was instantly on fire. He did not do anything but throw himself onto the ground and hugged Leng Ruoxue's leg. Master Ruoxue, please be my mistress. In an instant, the scene was silent. Uncle Long, Feng Luo, and the peacocks all held their breaths, not even daring to breathe loudly. The petrified Feng Xiao, after hearing these words, also came back to his senses. Although he couldn't see the person who spoke, these words still successfully made him feel confused. As the person involved, Leng Ruoxue's head was filled with black lines. She did not know what Qing Mu, who came out to steal the show, was trying to do. He's really bold. Didn't this guy feel the cold wind blowing around him? Leng Ruoxue did not need to look to know that the demon's expression was definitely not good. Ling, who loved to see the world in chaos, saw this scene and quietly removed the demon's invisibility technique. The dark-faced evildoer was already standing next to Leng Ruoxue. Qing Mu, who had only realized it later, suddenly felt a chill down her spine. Qing Mu, who had shrunk his neck and felt his heart palpitate, turned his head slightly and saw a face that had already turned black appear on his right. Immediately, he quivered and thought to himself, what is this guy trying to do? A kept woman? The evildoer asked coldly without letting Qing Mu wait for too long. You also want to recognize Shuer as your master? Azure also joined in the fun and asked. Although the other party's 3 words made him very unhappy, he was still very happy to watch when he saw someone causing trouble for the evil man. I just want a kept woman. Qing Mu said in a low voice. Although he was a little slow to react, at this moment, even if he was slow, he could feel that one of the 2 voices was very angry and the other did not have a good heart. You don't want to recognize me as your master? Azure asked indifferently. Qing Mu was silent under Tsang's questioning. All right. He had to admit that even though he did not mean it when he called her Master Ruoxue, it was true that he wanted to be her mistress. But looking at the situation now, it seemed that he only wanted to succeed in keeping her as a mistress. However, as a direct descendant of the Qing family, how could he have a master? If his clan members knew about this, he would definitely be hunted down. Qing Mu did not dare to take the risk of being hunted down by his clansmen. The price was too high. I am begging you to be my mistress. After a long silence, Qing Mu whispered again. These words also successfully made evildoer's face darken even more. He really didn't know how to repent. The demon gritted his teeth in anger, wishing he could kill this eyesore right now. However, Tsang laughed happily and said in a friendly manner, my girl won't feed a pretty boy who eats for nothing, AI. One pretty boy like that is enough, if there are more, my girl will be poor. Besides, you don't have the qualifications to be a pretty boy. He's so ugly. Tsang glanced at Qing Mu and said with a look of disdain. After he finished speaking, he even deliberately looked at the evildoer provocatively. However, after hearing what he said, the evildoer calmed down. He glanced at Qing Mu as if he was looking at a dead person, and the demon did not even look at him. Humph. Wasn't it just a matter of minutes for a guy with low strength to find trouble with him? There was no need to take him too seriously. Otherwise, he would only be a laughingstock to that damn cat. Receiving the evildoer's ignoring gaze and hearing Tsang's words, Qing Mu couldn't help but feel depressed. He was too ugly. Although he admitted that he wasn't as handsome as the man in front of him, and he wasn't as cute as this little boy, he wasn't too ugly, right? Speaking of ugly, this man with a dark face and a powerful cold aura was the one who was truly ugly, right? Qing Mu secretly complained in his heart, but Leng Ruoxue was not willing for this fellow to continue snatching the show. He was not the main character now, so he should just go and cool off somewhere. Leng Ruoxue kicked away Qing Mu's body in disgust and turned her gaze back to Feng Shao. You're the main character now, ignore him. Feng Shao, who was in a mess in the wind, regained his senses, but he didn't know what to say. The true identity of the woman in front of him had already stirred up his thoughts into a mess, like a ball of mush. Chapter 2463, Oh Heavens, 1, The Master of the Ancestor. To be honest, Feng Shao had no idea how to face this woman. Although the woman in front of him was old Grand Madame's master, he was still filled with resentment towards this woman named Leng Ruoxue. The people of the Feng clan were all prideful. As a member of the Feng clan, Feng Shao couldn't accept it from the bottom of his heart. The old ancestor he had always respected had found himself a human master. Most importantly, this master had some enmity with the Feng clan. Such a complicated relationship made Feng Shao so conflicted that his hair was about to turn white. However, what he couldn't accept was that he still needed Leng Ruoxue to save him when he was in such a difficult situation. This really hurt Phoenix's self-esteem. Feng Shao felt that his proud self-esteem had been shattered into pieces. He was sad, annoyed, and a little depressed about this fact, but he was not overjoyed that he was about to be rescued. It wasn't that he didn't want to be happy, but he really couldn't. Who would feel good after being saved by someone they didn't like? And now, Leng Ruoxue was the person he hated the most in his heart. Feng Shao was very worried. It was to the extent that Leng Ruoxue's words had caused him to not react for a long time. Leng Ruoxue seemed to be able to see the struggle in his heart, so she did not rush him. Instead, she found a chair and sat down, admiring the depressed phoenix in front of her. After being depressed for an unknown period of time, Feng Shao's consciousness gradually returned to his body. He could clearly feel a probing gaze on him. He raised his head and looked at the owner of the gaze. Coincidentally, his eyes met Leng Ruoxue's beautiful, smiling eyes. In an instant, Feng Shao became more and more worried. So he was the only one who was at a loss, and the other party didn't even take him seriously. Feng Shao opened his mouth and hesitated for a moment. He then swallowed the question he wanted to ask and stole a glance at Leng Ruoxue with a constipated look on his face. He even sighed. Leng Ruoxue saw that he looked like he wanted to say something but stopped himself, and her anger rose. She shot a cold glance at Feng Shao and said in an unpleasant tone, "If you have something to say, say it. Look at you now. Are you a man?" When Feng Shao heard this, he was also furious. You bastard! Which part of him didn't look like a man? Wasn't he too embarrassed to ask? One had to know that he had always treated Leng Ruoxue as an imaginary enemy. Now, he was suddenly saved by the enemy in his heart. The difference was huge. Didn't he need some time to get used to it? The angry Feng Shao sighed in his heart for a while, then he made up his mind and put on an act of a strong man cutting off his wrist and asked, "You're really Leng Ruoxue? Then you lied to us about your identity as Lian Wu?" "Yes." Leng Ruoxue nodded with a faint smile, then patiently waited for Feng Shao to continue. You're really too despicable. You're a big liar, how could you use another identity to deceive us?" After Feng Shao confirmed it, he was furious. How detestable. It was really too detestable. In order to make things difficult for the Phoenix King, he had actually helped Lord Lian Wu bully Feng Tong a lot. But now, he knew that he was not helping Lord Lian Wu, but that hateful Leng Ruoxue. Leng Ruoxue. It was actually Leng Ruoxue. He had actually helped his enemy. The blow that this fact gave him was really too great. He was so remorseful that his intestines turned green. However, he did not regret causing trouble for Feng Tong. What he regretted was that he had actually helped Leng Ruoxue to do evil. Thanks, although he felt good to see Feng Tong being defeated, once he thought about how he was actually helping Leng Ruoxue, his heart would be in a mess. He was so sad. In the blink of an eye, Feng Shao was heartbroken. It was an eye-opener for Leng Ruoxue. This phoenix's face changes really quickly. He was still seething with anger earlier, but in the blink of an eye, he was so sad that it was as if he had been abandoned. Recalling Feng Shao's earlier words, Leng Ruoxue sighed helplessly and said, "If I don't use any other identity, will I be able to enter the Phoenix clan with Leng Ruoxue's identity?" "That's true." Feng Shao nodded his head in a daze, but then he was secretly angry. Why did he agree to it? Shouldn't he be so angry that he was about to breathe fire? Feng Shao gritted his teeth in anger at his own abnormal behavior. He was even more furious when he saw Leng Ruoxue's sincere expression. However, he did not know why, but the fire in his heart could not be released when he looked at Leng Ruoxue. Sob. This was really too aggrieved. At this moment, he deeply experienced the kind of helplessness Feng Tong felt when he caused trouble for her. I wonder if this is retribution. Now, it was his turn to experience it for himself. Even though Leng Ruoxue had not done anything overboard to him, but when he thought of her identity and how he had unintentionally helped her when he was in the Feng clan, his heart clenched up in depression. Oh heavens! How could he be so stupid? Feng Shao looked up to the sky and sighed in his heart, tears streaming down his face. After that, he didn't say a word and lowered his head in a daze. No one knew what he was thinking. The atmosphere in the room became silent again. Leng Ruoxue and the rest were also silently admiring Feng Shao, who was tied up like a dumpling. Cheng Mu, who had been ignored for a while, saw that this was an opportunity that she could not miss. She approached Leng Ruoxue and gave her a fawning smile like a puppy. Then, she whispered, "I'm begging you to be my mistress." The moment Leng Ruoxue heard this, she did not even think and raised her leg to kick the fellow in front of her. However, someone was faster than her. With a loud bang, Cheng Mu's entire body was smashed into the snow-white wall. There was no need to ask. The one who kicked him was naturally the evildoer with a black face. The poor Cheng Mu, after being kicked to the wall, only cried out in pain and fainted. At this time, the wall had a human-shaped hole in it. Seeing that the walls were very sturdy, other than a human-shaped hole, there were no other cracks. Leng Ruoxue could not help but exclaim that the quality of the buildings in the city lord's residence was not bad. Seeing through Leng Ruoxue's thoughts, Tsang said with a face of disapproval, "Girl, the walls of the city master's mansion are definitely not as strong as the walls of the divine master's mansion. If I were the one who kicked the wall, the entire mansion would collapse, not just this hole." Azure's words implied that this evildoer was useless. He couldn't even break the walls of the city lord's manor with a single kick. The moment Leng Ruoxue heard this, black lines immediately formed on her forehead. Her beautiful eyes would even steal a glance at the evildoer's expression from time to time. It turned a little darker, and it looked like he was quite angry. Just as Leng Ruoxue was about to comfort her man, she saw the evildoer turn around and walk out of the room. She was shocked and quickly ordered Feng Luo to bring along the dazed Feng Shao. She also asked the peacocks to help fish out Cheng Mu, who had been smashed into the wall. The group of people hurriedly followed the evildoer out of the room. The moment they left the room, Ling quickly cast an invisibility spell on Leng Ruoxue and the rest. After that, everyone saw the demon throw out a ball of black divine power. Then, they heard a few loud bangs and the house in front of them collapsed magnificently. Chapter 2464, Oh Heavens, 2, this was not the end. After the house in front of him collapsed, the black divine power that the demon had thrown out came out of the pile of rubble again. Then, it floated all the way to the other direction of the city lord's mansion. Ah! The peacocks looked at the expressionless evildoer and broke out in cold sweat. They didn't need to think to know that the city lord's mansion was going to be in trouble. As expected, within a few minutes, Leng Ruoxue and the rest heard loud bangs from afar. It was followed by sounds of panic, wailing, and extremely angry. After hearing all this, the demon only said indifferently, "You can leave now." Leng Ruoxue led Uncle Long and the rest and followed behind the evildoer, obediently following him back to the inn. As for what would happen to the city lord's mansion, it was not within their scope of concern. When they arrived at the inn, Leng Ruoxue and the rest went straight into their rooms. At this moment, Dong Fangyu and the others were chatting in the room. When he saw them return, he couldn't help but smile and tease, "Shuer, you've been gone for so long. You must be having so much fun that you've forgotten about home." "Who said that?" "We were caught and thrown into prison." Leng Ruoxue rolled her eyes at Dong Fangyu and told him the truth. Dong Fangyu was stunned. There were people who were not afraid of death and dared to capture them. He's got guts. However, looking at Shuer, she didn't seem to be lying. Could it be true? After that, the surprised Dong Fangyu observed the expressions of the others. Other than Uncle Long, who looked calm, and the demon who had a straight face, Feng Luo and the peacocks all looked shocked. It seemed that something had really happened. At this moment, Dong Fangyu saw a man who was tied up on Feng Luo's shoulder. A few beautiful peacock men were also carrying an unconscious man. He didn't know these two people. Who were these two people? Dong Fangyu was very curious, but he didn't ask. He only stared at Feng Luo with his dark, starry eyes, hoping that this little boy could answer his question. However, Dong Fangyu's expression of seeking knowledge did not move Feng Luo. In Feng Luo's young mind, he was still thinking about the shocking scene just now. It was too terrifying, wasn't it? In the past, he had never felt that master's man was so terrifying. Because that man always had the appearance of a little boy begging for his master's caress. In front of them, he rarely showed such a domineering side. He didn't expect that today, he would deeply witness it and also scare him. Sob. He knew that one couldn't judge a book by its cover. How could the people around master not be violent? Feng Luo mourned for his ignorant thoughts in the past and tried hard to recall if he had ever offended that violent man. After thinking about it for a long time, Feng Luo finally felt relieved. Fortunately, he had always been careful and had never offended that violent man. In fact, the reason why Feng Luo didn't think that the demon was scary enough in the past, other than the fact that the demon he had seen had always been very calm, was also because he had never seen the Peacock King being beaten up. Because at that time, they were still in the territory of the Peacock clan. But now that he had seen it for himself, the monster was immediately raised to the number one figure that he could not afford to offend. At this time, when he saw that Feng Luo, the little fellow, had been in a daze and had a worried look on his face from time to time, Dong Fangyu finally couldn't bear it anymore. He poked the little fellow and asked bluntly, "Who are these two?" "Arg. They. The one on my shoulder is the Feng clan's elder Feng Shao, and the one the peacocks are carrying is the Qing family member." After a sudden realization, Feng Luo hurriedly explained. At the same time, he looked at Dong Fangyu with an unusually cautious gaze. Thanks, the people around master were not to be trifled with. Elder Feng Shao. Old Hua's descendant. Dong Fangyu's eyes narrowed. Shuer had mentioned this person to him before. He didn't expect that they were really fated to meet. However, he was very curious. How did they meet? With a stomach full of questions, Dong Fangyu reached out and took Feng Shao from Feng Luo's shoulder. He then smiled and said to Feng Luo, "Little Luo, leave this phoenix to me. I'll take good care of him." After hearing Dong Fangyu's words, Feng Luo couldn't help but widen his eyes. He was thinking, can I believe this guy's words? If Elder Feng Shao were to accidentally say something disrespectful to the master, this senior whose cultivation level he couldn't see through at all, he was afraid that he wouldn't let Feng Shao off. He was a little worried for Elder Feng Shao. However, Feng Luo didn't have the courage to refuse Dongfang Yu's words, especially after he had witnessed the horror of the demon. He didn't dare to offend any of the people around his master who he didn't know the details of. After helplessly transferring the ownership of Elder Feng Shao to Dongfang Yu, Feng Luo silently prayed for Elder Feng Shao in his heart. Elder Feng Shao, you're on your own. And just like that, Feng Shao was heartlessly abandoned by Feng Luo. As for Qing Mu, he was thrown to the ground by the peacocks in disdain. No one was willing to take over. By the time Feng Luo saw Feng Shao again, Feng Shao had already regained his composure on the surface. However, when he looked into Leng Ruoxia's eyes, there was a hint of resentment in them from time to time. However, every time he faced Dongfang Yu, Feng Shao was very obedient. Seeing Feng Shao in this state, Feng Luo couldn't help but sigh. He truly felt that Elder Feng Shao was afraid of the wrong person. To be able to make so many seniors listen to their master's words, master must be a small character that was easy to bully. However, Feng Luo did not voice out his thoughts because he knew that even if he did, Elder Feng Shao, who had a prejudice against his master, would not believe him. AI. Elder Feng Shao, take care. After having a good night's sleep, Leng Ruoxua planned to leave with everyone the next morning. However, just as they reached the lobby on the first floor of the inn manager carefully approached Leng Ruoxua and the rest and whispered, "Are you going out? We want to check out." Leng Ruoxua smiled. "Dear guests, please stay for a few days. I can't leave the city now," the inn manager suggested with a smile. Why? Leng Ruoxua didn't understand. Even though they had only known each other for less than 2 days, she had a pretty good impression of this manager. He didn't seem like a black manager who forced guests to stay. "The city gates have been tightened. You're not allowed to enter or leave," the inn manager said. "What happened?" Leng Ruoxua blinked her eyes and asked, pretending to be confused. "Yup. Hee. The city lord's mansion had been destroyed by someone last night, and it had all been turned into a pile of debris. It was really a tragic sight. I heard that the city lord is injured, and it's hard to say if he can be humane in the future." As the inn manager said this, he looked around vigilantly, as if he was afraid of being heard, but the excitement in his voice could not be concealed. Leng Ruoxua was speechless when she heard the manager's words. Was the shopkeeper really from Chuan City? If she remembered correctly, the shop they were currently staying in belonged to the Lu family, right? Shouldn't the shops belonging to the Lu family in Chuan City be under the jurisdiction of the city lord's mansion? His superior's home had been destroyed, and as a subordinate, was he allowed to gloat over it? Chapter 2465, Oh Heavens, 3, Yes. From the manager's tone, Leng Ruoxua could tell that he was gloating over her misfortune. This made her slightly curious. As the fire of gossip burned in her heart, Leng Ruoxua could not hold it in any longer and asked directly, "Shopkeeper, are you gloating? The city lord's mansion has been destroyed, and the city lord is injured, but you seem to be quite happy." Even though Leng Ruoxia's voice was not loud, it still caused the innkeeper to break out in cold sweat. With a pale face, the innkeeper said in fear, "I didn't Sir, you can't wrong me like this. If the people of the city lord's mansion heard this, they'll be in deep trouble. You don't have any." "Innkeeper, I don't lie in front of a wise person. I can see that you are very excited. Actually, when I first heard this news, I didn't hide it from you, I was also quite happy." Leng Ruoxua tried to entice him. "Really?" Seeing that Leng Ruoxua did not seem to be lying and was an outsider, the manager was no longer afraid. It was as if he had met a soulmate as he began to pour out his grievances to Leng Ruoxua. "Your Excellency. To be honest, I detest the city lord of Chuan City. This guy was really not an ordinary black-hearted person. It's reasonable to say that although our shops belong to the Lu family, they don't completely belong to us. Aside from the amount of money we have to hand over to the family every year, the rest of the money belongs to us. With such motivation, we'll naturally do our best to run the shops, but this black-hearted city lord has ordered that after we hand over a certain amount of profits to the family, we have to give them half of the remaining profits. In this way, we'll naturally have nothing left of the profits we earn every year. The shopkeeper complained. That's not all. In addition to giving half of the remaining profits to the black-hearted city lord, our city lord's daughter and the city lord's guards will also have to come here from time to time to take advantage of us. How could we dare to not give them? But if we give it to them, we'll have to live on air. AI. The innkeeper continued, sighing as he spoke. If it wasn't for the incident at the city lord's mansion, he would have been extremely pleased. In addition, Leng Ruoxue had taken the initiative to ask, so he really wouldn't have dared to pour out his grievances so easily. Right, by the way, I'd like to remind you that our city lord likes beautiful women, and his daughter likes beautiful men. So, sir, it's best if the beautiful men around you don't go out during the day, otherwise, if the city lord's daughter encounters them, I'm afraid it'll be bad. As for the city lord, there was no need to worry about him now. In the future, when I meet a beautiful woman, I'm afraid I'll be powerless. The shopkeeper became more and more excited as he spoke, and the expression on his face became more and more vulgar. When Leng Ruoxue heard these words, she glanced at the expression on the manager's face and felt helpless. AI. This was probably a silent resistance by adding insult to injury after being oppressed for so long. Thank you, manager. We will be more careful. After some thought, Leng Ruoxue finally spoke. In reality, she really wanted to tell the head that he had reminded them a little too late. They had already met the city lord's daughter yesterday, but Leng Ruoxue was afraid of scaring the shopkeeper, so she swallowed her words back into her stomach. Faced with the kind shopkeeper, Leng Ruoxue and the rest could only put on an act and agree to stay for a few days until the city gates were unsealed. When the shopkeeper heard this, he was immediately overjoyed. These people living here meant that his income would increase again. The innkeeper, who was in a good mood, sent his parents back to their room and left. Upon entering the room, Leng Ruoxue suddenly frowned. With a change of thought, an extremely disheveled man appeared in front of them. When the man came out, he wasn't mentally prepared at all, so he fell from the air and landed on his back. Shuer, you're not gentle at all. Chengmu got up from the ground awkwardly and complained in a low voice. You want me to treat you gently? Leng Ruoxue asked with a smile as she squinted her beautiful eyes. As soon as he said this, Chengmu immediately felt a chill down his spine. He shrank his neck and waved his hands. No need. No need. This is good. Woo, this is too much of a bully. Cheng Mu's face was full of tears. People without a backer were so sad. You're tactful. Leng Ruoxue nodded her head in satisfaction and continued, from now on, you'll be by the demon's side. He'll teach you a good lesson. Why? Hearing this, Chengmu wailed. Woo. He didn't want to be by that violent man's side. He would be played to death. The other party's ecstatic kick had left a deep impression on him. So, he was determined not to stay by that man's side. He still wanted to live for a few more years. Thanks. After thinking for a while, Chengmu said with a charming face, Shuer. I'll just stay by the great elder's side and do some odd jobs for him, I'll be satisfied. Of course, it would be even better if he was served well by the great elder and the old man was happy to take him as a disciple or something. However, he only dared to think about it in his heart. He definitely did not dare to say it out loud in front of Leng Ruoxue. Otherwise, if this woman thought that he was trying to poach her, he would probably die without even knowing how he died. Oh, really? It's a pity that the great elder thinks you're too noisy and doesn't want you to disturb him. Leng Ruoxue threw out this fact calmly and immediately made Chengmu feel dizzy. This was impossible. How could the great elder hate him? He had used all his strength to please that old man. Even if the old man was giving face to his ancestor, he shouldn't hate him, right? Chengmu was puzzled. Suddenly, He had a flash of inspiration. Jealousy. It was definitely jealousy. Leng Ruoxue must have been jealous of his good relationship with the first elder, so she had intentionally broken them up. That must be it. Cheng Mu thought that he had found the reason why Leng Ruoxue did not allow him to be with the great elder. The way he looked at Leng Ruoxue instantly turned resentful. When Leng Ruoxue saw this, she could not help but feel embarrassed. What was this guy trying to do? Why did she feel that Cheng Mu gave her the feeling that she was the evil person who had broken up a pair of lovebirds? Although Leng Ruoxue did not quite understand Cheng Mu's current thoughts, she had two little secret agents. After Tsang and Qing Ju told Leng Ruoxue about Cheng Mu's thoughts, Leng Ruoxue felt helpless. She really did not know what to say about Cheng Mu's overthinking. At this time, she really regretted listening to the great elder's words yesterday and moving Cheng Mu, who had been abandoned on the ground, into the mobile house. Thinking of this, she simply moved the great elder out of the house. The first elder was eating breakfast. He was holding a half-eaten snack in his hand and his mouth was full. When he was suddenly moved out, he was stunned for a while before he realized that his image was not good. The first elder quickly swallowed the food in his mouth and said with a slight dissatisfaction, "Girl, I'm eating. Can't you wait until I'm done eating?" "I can't wait. This guy wants to stay by your side and serve you." Leng Ruoxue pointed at Cheng Mu, who had been looking at the first elder with love in his eyes ever since the first elder came out. When he saw Cheng Mu's expression, the great elder felt disgusted. Then, he pulled away from Cheng Mu with a look of disgust and said angrily, "Girl, keep this guy away from me. Otherwise, don't blame me for not considering our friendship." When Leng Ruoxue heard this, she laughed in her heart. On the other hand, Cheng Mu's face was ashen. Woo! How could the great elder hurt people like this? Didn't they get along well last night? Thinking back to last night, when Cheng Mu had just woken up, the first person she saw was the great elder of the Armament Guild headquarters. At that time, the great elder was so gentle and considerate. Although the other party kept saying that he was taking care of him because of his ancestor, he was still quite grateful. Later, he suddenly remembered that this somewhat familiar old man in front of him was the great elder of the Craftsmen's Guild headquarters. He was overjoyed and stuck to the great elder's back like a dog trying to please its master. In the beginning, didn't the great elder praise him for being polite and knowing how to respect the elderly? Why did you change your face so quickly? This person was definitely not the gentle great elder from yesterday. Right. This person was not the great elder. The great elder must have been switched by the bad person, Leng Ruoxue. The more Cheng Mu thought about it, the more he felt that this was possible. Because he really couldn't believe that someone could change their attitudes so quickly and make him so confused. Cheng Mu thought that he had always been very careful and had never offended the great elder. Therefore, he really felt that the great elder should not despise him so much. Sob. This would make him sad. At the thought of this, Cheng Mu immediately glared at Leng Ruoxue with a face full of hatred. He had wanted to roar at Leng Ruoxue with a high-spirited aura, but at that moment, the face of the terrifying man from yesterday suddenly appeared in his mind, causing his entire aura to wither before he could even do anything. However, he still bravely pounced towards Leng Ruoxue. Woo! Shua-er! How can you treat me like this? You found me a fake great elder to fool me, do you think I'm stupid? Cheng Mu's face was covered in tears. She cried and fell to the ground. Her hands were still hugging Leng Ruoxue's ankle tightly. This scene caused most of the people in the room to be dumbfounded. Leng Ruoxue was speechless, helpless, and helpless. As expected, the demon's face darkened. She really didn't learn. The evildoer was furious and walked straight in Cheng Mu's direction. Uncle Long and the others who were frightened saw this scene and unconsciously made way for the evildoer. Chapter 2466, To Save People or to Take Lives. 1. Then, everyone saw the evildoer lift one hand and Cheng Mu, who was holding onto Leng Ruoxue's ankle, was lifted up. Then, with a light flick of his wrist, Cheng Mu, who was in his grasp, was thrown out of the window by the evildoer. A loud bang was heard. This action of lifting and throwing was as smooth as floating clouds and flowing water, leaving everyone dumbfounded. For a long while, everyone did not know what to say. However, at this sensitive moment, no one would stupidly speak up for Ching Mu. Even the Armament Guild's chief elder, who had originally planned to take care of Ching Mu for the sake of the Ching clan head, had unsurprisingly shut his mouth. At first, the great elder had thought that if no one had come to teach that silly boy a lesson, he would have done it. He didn't want that silly boy to slaughter him like a fat sheep. However, before he had the chance to do so, someone had made the first move. In this way, for the sake of old man Cheng, he naturally couldn't hit him when he was down, although he really wanted to do so. Who asked that idiot to be so infuriating, to actually say that he was a fake? The more the great elder thought about it, the angrier he got. Fortunately, Ching Mu was not in front of him at this time. Otherwise, he could not guarantee that he would not be so violent. Seeing the evildoer sit down as if nothing had happened, everyone hurriedly sat down as well. They did not want to make him unhappy and throw them out of the window. Although it was only a third floor and they would not die from the fall, it was undoubtedly embarrassing. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but sympathize with Ching Mu. You've lost all the face of the Ching family. He didn't know how furious the head of the Ching family would be when he found out about this. Everyone was secretly speculating. At this moment, they suddenly heard a knock on the door. Leng Ruoxue gave a signal to a beautiful peacock man to open the door. The moment the door opened, he saw Ching Mu standing outside. Although Ching Mu looked a little disheveled, she did not look like she had suffered much. However, Peacock Handsome Man was already surprised enough to see him. More importantly, the kind Peacock Handsome Man didn't know if he should let this guy in. Just as Peacock Handsome Man was hesitating, Ching Mu pushed him away and made way for him. Then, he immediately ran into the room. The first thing he did when he entered the room was to seek protection from the Great Elder. However, the Great Elder turned his head away, obviously not wanting to talk to him. Seeing this, Ching Mu pouted his lips in grievance, and tears welled up in his eyes. Before he could cry out, the demon had already stood up and grabbed his collar. With a light swing, Ching Mu was thrown out of the window in a perfect arc. Ugh. The first elder couldn't help but cover his face. How pitiful. The others also sympathized with Ching Mu. She really did not have a good memory. She just did not know if Ching Mu would come back shamelessly this time. However, before they could finish their thoughts, there was another knock on the door. Peacock Handsome Man, who had been standing at the door, opened the door without waiting for his master's instructions. The person standing outside the door was indeed Ching Mu. However, this time, there were more bruises on his face. As expected, Ching Mu was thrown out of the window by the demon in the same way. However, after a few minutes, Ching Mu came up again as if nothing had happened. He was thick-skinned and naturally had more injuries on his body. Just like that, one of them kept on throwing people out while the others spared no effort to come back. After an unknown number of times, Leng Ruoxue and the rest were already numb from watching. In the end, Tsang could not stand it anymore and directly kicked Ching Mu far away. This time, it wasn't as simple as throwing Ching Mu out of the window. With Tsang's move, it was obviously impossible for Ching Mu to climb back easily. Just like that, everyone saw Ching Mu turn into a stream of light and finally become a small black dot, disappearing in the sky. Thanks. Ugh. Senior Tsang was really ruthless. Everyone quivered. Tsang was once again on the blacklist of the #1 person not to be offended. Seeing this scene, Feng Luo's heart also reversed the position of Tsang and evildoer. At this time, he really felt that this cat was 100 times more ruthless than his master's man. Seeing everyone's fearful expressions, Cold gave evildoer a provocative look and then smiled. Human. You're cruel to yourself, but you have to be even more cruel to others. What you did just now was not treating the root of the problem at all. He's not afraid at all. How do you know he's not afraid? The demon narrowed his eyes. If you're afraid, will he dare to come back? Azure said matter-of-factly. Why wouldn't I? Are we going to kill him? The evildoer said indifferently. If that kid wasn't a member of the Qing family, he really wanted to kill that idiot. What a pity. There were too many people here, and it was inconvenient to do anything. Hearing this, Azure looked at the people present and felt a sense of powerlessness. There were so many people here, so it would not be easy to make a move. AI. The man and the beast looked at each other and felt a sense of appreciation for each other. Len Ruoxua looked at their expressions and knew that these two fellows must be feeling regretful that they could not teach Qingmu a lesson. However, on account of the Qing family head, she naturally could not let these two willful fellows cut Qingmu off in a fit of anger. After all, other than being a little silly and unable to see the situation clearly, Qingmu did not seem to have done anything that would anger the heavens and cause resentment. At the thought of this, Len Ruoxua quickly changed the topic and asked, "Are we going to stay here until the city gates are unsealed?" "Anything. I'm fine with anywhere." First Elder was the first to express his opinion. "We are the same." Dongfang Yu and the others quickly said. "Then just stay. I also want to see what kind of trouble the city lord's mansion is going to cause." Len Ruoxua asked with anticipation. However, to her disappointment, after staying in the inn for another 3 days, there was no movement from the city lord's mansion. They only posted a notice for the reward. After learning about the bounty notice, Len Ruoxua decided to take a trip to the Divine Master's residence in the name of accepting the bounty. Dongfang Yu and the others immediately expressed their desire to follow. Len Ruoxua had no choice but to bring along many of her family members. However, this time, she had changed the appearance of Feng Luo and the beautiful peacock man. When they reached the ground floor, the innkeeper saw them coming down again and thought that they wanted to check out. He wanted to persuade them, but who knew that Len Ruoxua would only tell him that they were planning to head to the city lord's mansion to accept the reward. The shopkeeper's eyes immediately lit up when he heard this and he said with joy, "Are there any alchemists among you?" "No, I didn't." Len Ruoxua looked at the few people present and said. Hearing her answer, Uncle Long and the others, as well as the inn's shopkeeper, were all speechless. However, they had different thoughts. What Uncle Long and the others were thinking was, "Girl, you're obviously one." Meanwhile, the inn manager was thinking, without an alchemist, how could he still be so confident? He really didn't know where these people got their confidence from. Chapter 2467, To Save People or to Take Lives. 2. Although the inn manager's curiosity was piqued, he still kindly reminded, "Your Excellency. If you don't have an alchemist, I advise you not to accept the city lord's bounty. If you don't handle it well, you might die." Is the city lord a homicidal maniac? Len Ruoxua blinked her beautiful eyes as she asked curiously. "No. What I mean is, if you can't cure the city lord's illness, he might do something in a fit of anger. So, you'd better not accept this bounty and just stay in the inn. My inn belongs to the Liu family, so it's relatively safer." The inn manager advised earnestly. "But it's too boring to stay in the inn. We want to find something to do and take a trip to the city lord's mansion." Len Ruoxua asked with anticipation. However, the inn manager who heard this was in a state of confusion. Bored? Looking for something? He still had to go to the city lord's mansion. These people were really bored to death. One had to know that this was a critical period. Most people couldn't wait to get as far away from the city lord's mansion as possible. How would there be anyone willing to take the initiative to court death? But these people really made him, a kind inn manager, powerless. After a long while, the inn manager did not know what to say. He could only stare at Len Ruoxua and the rest. Finally, he made up his mind and put on an expression that said he was going to risk everything. He whispered to Len Ruoxua and the rest, "My esteemed guests. To tell you the truth, the city lord's illness is not light. If you are not alchemists and can't cure his illness, he will definitely not leave you alive in a rage. You're my customers, and I really don't want to see you die. AI. You'd better listen to me and not go to the city lord's mansion to join in the fun. I promise that if there's any news from the city lord's mansion, you'll be the first ones to know. Is that not enough? The inn manager's words were extremely sincere. Even though it was suspicious that he was siding with an outsider, he was truly concerned about the safety of Leng Ruoxue and the others. He did not want anything to happen to the guests who were staying in his inn, as it would affect the reputation of his inn. With this thought in mind, the manager of the inn hoped to keep these people in the inn. At least, their lives would not be in danger. However, these people in front of him did not look like good people who knew their place. This fact made the manager particularly worried. As expected, when Leng Ruoxue heard the innkeeper's words, she only gave him a grateful look and said softly, "We're not afraid that the city lord of Chuan City will kill us. We're afraid that we won't be able to resist the urge to kill him. What do you think we should do?" These words made the inn manager dumbfounded. He was completely confused. While the inn manager was still in a daze, Leng Ruoxue led a group of people and left the inn. By the time the inn manager regained his senses, Leng Ruoxue and the others had already disappeared. Upon seeing this, the inn manager could only sigh helplessly. However, for some reason, when he recalled what Leng Ruoxue had said, he felt a tinge of joy in his heart. After quickly putting away his other thoughts, the inn manager looked around and went back to doing what he had to do as if nothing had happened. Leng Ruoxue and the rest left the inn and headed straight for the city lord's residence. Due to the incident at the city lord's residence a few days ago, the city gates had been heavily restricted, causing the streets to be almost deserted. Leng Ruoxue and the rest were unimpeded along the way. When they arrived at the city lord's residence's main gate and saw the undamaged tall walls, everyone could not help but think, it seems like the city lord's residence did not suffer a huge loss. At this moment, they saw that there was a bounty notice posted on both sides of the door. Leng Ruoxue did not even think about it and immediately went to the designated location to register. The person in charge of the registration was a butler from the city lord's residence. After glancing at the unremarkable-looking Leng Ruoxue and the rest, the butler raised his head arrogantly and asked indifferently, "Who's an alchemist?" "Thanks, no one," Leng Ruoxue said with a smile, her attitude extremely good. When a certain butler heard this, he was instantly enraged. Fuck. If there were no alchemists, why would they come here to register? Was he kidding? A certain butler was very angry, and the consequences were very serious. The butler in charge of registration did not say anything and immediately called for the guards. He pointed at Leng Ruoxue and the rest and said, "Arrest these people who are here to cause trouble." The moment the vicious guards heard this, they were ready to take action. Leng Ruoxue saw this and quickly stopped them. "Wait. Why did they capture us? We're not here to cause trouble. You guys aren't alchemists, and you're not here to cause trouble. Could it be that you're really here to treat the city lord?" A certain butler shouted out of certainty. "We're really here to treat your city lord, we're not here to cause trouble," Leng Ruoxue vowed. "Humph. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? Do you think I'm that easy to fool?" A certain butler clearly didn't believe Leng Ruoxue's words at all. He looked at her with an even worse expression. Originally, the city lord's mansion was in a troubled period. The villain who destroyed the city lord's mansion was not caught, and these people wanted to cheat the city lord's mansion of its money on the grounds of treatment. If this was not causing trouble, what was it? "I'm not lying to you, I'm really here to treat your city lord, you have to believe me." Besides, the bounty notice didn't say that only alchemists are allowed. Leng Ruoxue could not help but remind him. Hearing this, a certain steward began to think. The bounty they issued really didn't state that only alchemists could come. However, no matter how he looked at it, these people didn't seem to have any ability. Thinking this way, he said, "Since you're here to treat the city lord, it'll give you a chance in accordance with the principle of fairness. However, because you're not alchemists, if you can't treat the city lord, you can only leave your lives here, understand?" "I understand. We understand." Leng Ruoxue nodded her head. Seeing that these people were still tactful, a certain butler gave a look to the guard. The guard understood and brought Leng Ruoxue and the rest into the city lord's residence. The last time they came to the city lord's mansion was at night, so they basically didn't have the chance to properly tour the city lord's mansion. This time, although it was daytime, they were also unable to visit the city lord's mansion. The city lord's mansion was in a mess. They had thought that the city lord's mansion didn't suffer too much damage. However, when they saw the ruins, they had to admit that only the outer wall of the mansion was barely visible. They couldn't even think about the inside. The city lord's courtyard was the first to be renovated. However, only one room was renovated to allow the city lord to recuperate. When Leng Ruoxue and the rest were brought here, they realized that the dilapidated courtyard was filled with people. Not only that, but those people seemed to be lining up. The guard who had led Leng Ruoxue and the others only said to them, "Let's line up here and wait." He left them behind and turned to leave. "Little girl, are the people in line here to treat the city lord?" Uncle Long couldn't help but click his tongue when he saw the situation. How many alchemists did the city lord's mansion find to treat the city lord's illness? Or was the city lord's illness too serious, and he was trying a last resort? Chapter 2468, To Save People or to Take Lives. 3. Before Leng Ruoxue could even reply to Uncle Long, the person in front of them heard him and turned to Uncle Long. "You're right, we're all here to treat the city lord's mansion. However, I don't know when it'll be our turn." Sigh. "We'll have to wait." The person who spoke was so depressed that he kept sighing. "Are you all alchemists?" Uncle Long asked curiously. "Yup. Who would dare to come if they were not alchemists? However, this city lord's attitude is quite big. This is the first time I've seen someone who has to queue up to see a pill master." The man complained. "You know he's arrogant, but you're still willing to come?" Uncle Long was very confused. Didn't they say that alchemists were very proud? They were willing to line up for such a long time. If it wasn't for the reward, do you think anyone would come? The man replied honestly. "That's true. I heard that the city lord's mansion's rewards are pretty good." Uncle Long nodded seriously. "It's not bad, but I don't know if I have a chance to get it." The man became worried again as he spoke. Seeing him like this, Uncle Long didn't know how to comfort him. Moreover, the city lord's courtyard was still relatively dilapidated, and there were many people lining up here, so Uncle Long couldn't find a spacious place to stand even if he wanted to. AI. They were here to suffer. When he thought of this, Uncle Long could not help but look at Leng Ruoxue with a face full of hidden bitterness. He was starting to regret coming here to watch the show. Because the current situation was clearly that he did not get to see the show, and instead, he was here to suffer. Just as Uncle Long was grumbling, a painful scream suddenly came from the room. Even Uncle Long, who had seen many things, was frightened by the terrifying sound. Some of the less powerful alchemists instantly turned pale. But fortunately, a considerable number of people were relatively calm. Perhaps it was because they had heard this kind of sound too many times, so they all acted as if nothing had happened and continued to chat with each other in groups of 2 or 3. "Little girl, are we still going to stay here?" Uncle Long didn't want to stay any longer. "Uncle Long, if you want to leave now, will they let you?" Leng Ruoxue said. "Ah." Upon hearing this, Uncle Long became listless. When they came in, he had already said that if he couldn't be cured, he had to leave his life behind. Although he didn't care about such a threat, now was obviously not the time to expose his identity. AI. Endure it. The depressed Uncle Long finally calmed down after consoling himself for a while. However, he didn't want to just stand there like the alchemists in line. After some thought, Uncle Long took out a recliner and a tent. He cleared out an empty space and set up the tent. Then, he lay down comfortably on the recliner. Of course, Uncle Long had cleared out the place for the reclining chairs and tent himself. Thus, although the alchemists present were envious and jealous of Uncle Long's actions, no one dared to criticize him. Uncle Long wasn't someone who didn't understand the ways of the world. He then took out some food and fruits to entertain the envious alchemists. When the alchemists saw that there was food, their eyes immediately lit up. It wasn't that they were hungry, but it was quite tiring to stand like this. If they could have some food to relax, they would definitely feel much more relaxed. Because of this, they didn't stand on ceremony with Uncle Long's warm hospitality. Soon, Uncle Long became friends with the alchemists in the queue and learned a lot of information about the city lord from them. Time passed quickly as Uncle Long and the other alchemists conversed happily. As the saying goes, those who feed will not benefit. Every alchemist who went into the city lord's room to treat the city lord would tell them about the city lord's condition after they came out. Of course, the painful howls continued to be heard. In the end, when Len Ruoxue and the others finally got used to it, it was their turn to make an appearance. When Len Ruoxue saw that it was her turn, she was about to bring the evildoer and the rest into her room. However, she was stopped by the head butler who had been standing guard in the city lord's room. The head butler sized up Len Ruoxue and the rest before he asked, "Who's in charge of treating the city lord?" "I am," Len Ruoxue said with a smile. "Then you're allowed to come in alone," the chief steward said with some disdain. He saw that these people's looks were really disappointing to the audience, so he naturally looked down on them. He didn't think that they could cure the city lord at all. However, they were currently treating the city lord's injuries as if they were a dead horse. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, they didn't want to let it go. After all, whether the city lord could recover or not was related to their future. "No. They are all my assistants. Without their help, I can't save your city lord by myself." Len Ruoxue had a look that said, "Do as you see fit," as she spoke to the head butler. "Then what are you waiting for? Come in quickly." The head butler compromised. Thanks. Len Ruoxue could not help but roll her eyes at the head butler when she heard him urging her. He thought to himself, if it wasn't for your insistent refusal to let them in, they would have already gone in. When they entered the room, Len Ruoxue and the others were shocked to see the city lord of River City lying on the bed. Oh my god! Was he still human? The city lord's entire body was festering, and he was beyond human shape. His body was also emitting a foul smell. Blood mixed with pus flowed down from the festering wounds. At this time, the city lord of River City was almost in a semi-conscious state. From time to time, he would groan in pain, which proved that he was still alive. Even though Len Ruoxue and the rest were prepared that the city lord's injuries would not be light, they did not expect that the city lord's injuries would be much more serious than they had expected. No wonder so many alchemy masters were helpless against this. This injury was really not light. When Len Ruoxue and the rest saw the city lord of Chuan City's injuries, they could not help but turn their gazes to the evildoer. However, the evildoer's face was calm as he allowed everyone to admire him. Upon seeing this, Len Ruoxue could not help but ask, "Evildoer, what's with the injuries on his body?" She didn't believe that the city lord would be so seriously injured for no reason. After all, they didn't confront each other directly at that time. "It's nothing," the demon said with a faint smile. "I was just injured by my divine power." Len Ruoxue finally understood. If she remembered correctly, the demonic god's divine power was corrosive. It was no wonder that this city lord's entire body was festering. However, he could only blame it on his bad luck. Len Ruoxue would not sympathize with him. On the contrary, she even took the initiative to ask for the demon's opinion. "Should we save him?" "Whatever. If we save him, hell wish he was dead." The demon was quite calm when he said this. Len Ruoxue was silent. So, should she save him or not? If she didn't save them, the other party would threaten her to leave her life behind. Although she wasn't afraid, their identities would be exposed. What if someone from the Liu family linked the injured city lord of Chuan City to them? This place was not far from the Feng clan. Thinking about it, it was really troublesome. Len Ruoxue was starting to regret joining in on the fun. Curiosity killed the cat, indeed, not without reason. Seeing Shuai's dilemma, the demon smiled and transmitted his voice, Shuai, although the city lord of Chuan City isn't a good person, it's okay for us to do some good deeds occasionally. Alright then. Leng Ruoxue agreed. She really did not know if what she was doing was considered a good deed. However, the evildoer himself had agreed to save her, so why was she still struggling? At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxue walked to the side of the bed and deliberately observed it in detail. Then, she asked the city lord about the cause of the illness. The head butler was eager to save Leng Ruoxue, so he answered all her questions. When Leng Ruoxue heard the head butler mention the cause of the illness, she knew that he had been answering many of her questions. After asking, Leng Ruoxue remained silent. The head butler looked at Leng Ruoxue with an anxious expression, waiting for her answer. Head butler, I'm not an alchemist, so I can only use my own secret technique to see if I can cure your city lord. So, you'd better not have too much hope. Leng Ruoxue reminded him with a serious expression. The head butler nodded repeatedly when he heard this. He knew that alchemists liked to say the ugly words before they treated people to prevent the patient's family members from making trouble when they couldn't cure the patient. He could understand this. As for Leng Ruoxue's claim that she was not an alchemist, it was automatically ignored by the head butler. In his eyes, as long as he could cure the city lord, who cared about the other party's identity? After obtaining the head butler's understanding, Leng Ruoxue smiled and took out a bunch of silver needles. Just as she was about to pick one up and insert it into the unlucky city lord's body, the head butler quickly stopped her. Wait. What was he doing? Is this murder? The head butler couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat from his forehead and asked. Looking at the cold and flashing silver light, he felt a chill down his back. It wasn't that he had never seen silver needles before, but wasn't the silver needle in this person's hand a little too thick? If the silver needle, which was at least as thick as an adult's little finger, were to pierce the city lord's body, would the city lord, who was already weak, still be able to live? Furthermore, the other party had even taken out a gun. It was obvious that his little heart was trembling with fear. Head butler, calm down. Leng Ruoxue threw a discontented look at the head butler. When the head butler heard this, he immediately expressed that he couldn't stay calm. Was this to save people or to save lives? If such a thick silver needle were to be inserted, the city lord's little life would probably be gone. This was no small matter. Seeing the head butler's firm objection, Leng Ruoxue could only patiently explain to him, Head butler, look at your city lord's injuries. Not a single piece of skin on his body is intact. If you want to cure him, you'll naturally have to use extreme methods. My silver needle technique is definitely the right cure. You have to believe me. Chapter 2469, I've missed you so much. 1. Even though Leng Ruoxue's words were said with great patience, the head butler of the city lord's residence still had a frown on his face. He looked very hesitant as he looked at the giant silver needle in Leng Ruoxue's hand, then at the city lord who was lying on the bed like a half-dead man. The head butler was in a dilemma. The head butler didn't know if he should believe the words of this ordinary woman in front of him. He kept feeling that this woman's words were so unreliable. Would the city lord be able to withstand such thick silver needles? Just as the head butler was hesitating and could not make up his mind, Leng Ruoxue struck while the iron was hot. Head butler, look at your city lord's appearance, what are you afraid of? Even if I can't cure the city lord of Chuan City, the result will be worse than now. I suggest you give it a try. My silver needle technique is quite amazing. Really? The head butler looked at Leng Ruoxue with a doubtful expression and asked with uncertainty. I guarantee it's true. Leng Ruoxue vowed. Then let's try. The head butler was also at his wit's end. Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue nodded her head in satisfaction. She then continued, there's one more thing that I need your help with. What is it? The head butler asked curiously. Looking at your city lord's current state, there's an 80% chance that he needs to change his blood. Hence, I can only trouble the head butler to help me find someone with healthy blood. Leng Ruoxue said this very cautiously. However, before she could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by the head butler. "No problem, I'll go find them now," the head butler said impatiently. If the blood exchange could really cure the city lord, then what did it matter if 1 or 2 people were sacrificed? Head butler, not just anyone can do it. It has to be someone who is blood related to City Lord Lu. Moreover, the closer the blood, the better. Leng Ruoxua smiled as she reminded him. Hearing this, the head butler was stunned. What did this woman mean? Blood related? And the closer, the better? It wasn't what he understood, was it? If that was the case, then wouldn't only the city lord's daughter be able to change the city lord's blood? When the head butler thought of this possibility, he couldn't help but feel a headache. Ever since the city lord's mansion was destroyed by an unknown person and the city lord fell ill, the city lord's daughter had moved to the inn for safety. If the city lord's daughter were to change the city lord's blood, I'm afraid that the young miss might not be willing. It could be said that the chief butler had watched Lu Rong grow up, so he was quite clear about his young lad's selfish character. So, he didn't need to think to know that the young lady would definitely not agree to this matter, even if the other party was her father. Moreover, something like changing blood sounded mysterious. If something happened to the young lady while she was changing the city lord's blood, he would not be able to explain it to the city lord. One had to know that the city lord usually doted on the young miss very much. Thinking of this, the head butler was conflicted again. Leng Ruoxua could tell that he was hiding something from her, so she continued, "Head butler, think carefully about which is more important, the life of your city lord or the blood of the city lord's daughter." Of course, the city lord's life was more important. Was there a need to think about this? As the saying goes, every emperor changes his courtiers. Without the city lord, they, as his subordinates, would naturally not have a good future. The city lord's daughter could forget about continuing to call the shots in Chuan City, even though this was obvious. However, when he thought about the need for Lu Rong's blood transfusion, he could not make up his mind. Thanks, it would be fine if the Castellan recovered after the blood transfusion, but if he didn't, wouldn't Miss Lu Rong's sacrifice be in vain? That. I want to know, after the blood transfusion, will the person's life be in danger? After hesitating for a long time, the head butler could not help but ask. That's hard to say. Leng Ruoxua laughed evilly. Why did you say it when it's not convenient? Such uncertainties made the head butler frown again. If he could, he really wanted to strangle this woman in front of him. She was really too hateful, didn't he? Head butler, what are you hesitating for? I'm not using your blood. At this time, Uncle Long, who didn't want to see the head butler's indecisiveness, couldn't help but interrupt. When the head butler heard this, he almost fainted. Fuck. It's easy for you to say that, but the person who's going to have her blood replaced is the city lord's daughter. Moreover, although the city lord had many women over the years, he only had Lu Rong as his only child. He usually doted on her to the point that he would grant all requests. If something happened to Miss Lu Rong because she was changing the city lord's blood, the city lord might be furious. For a moment, the head butler only thought that the city lord would be angry if Lu Rong was in trouble, but he didn't think that the city lord was lying in bed in a half-conscious state. Even if he wanted to be angry, could he be angry? And Leng Ruoxua had precisely calculated this, which was why she wanted to draw some blood for Lu Rong. She dared to provoke her. If she didn't let Lu Rong know why the flowers were so red, how useless would she be? From the very beginning, she had wanted to plot against Lu Rong, but she had never found the right opportunity. The blood transfusion was only an idea that came to her mind on a whim. In this way, not only did he save the city lord, but he also punished Lu Rong. It was simply the best of both worlds. At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxua smiled faintly and put on an expression that said she would not make things difficult for the head butler. She then suggested, "Head butler, I know it's hard for you to make the decision. Why don't you ask your city lord for his opinion?" This, looking at the half-unconscious city lord on the bed, the head butler didn't know if the city lord would understand. At this moment, a guard suddenly came to report that someone from the main family had arrived. The head butler's face turned pale when he heard that. How did the main family find out about this so quickly? The city gate had clearly been sealed off. This matter should not have spread out. The sudden arrival of the main family made the unprepared head butler anxious like an ant on a hot pan, and he kept running in circles on the ground. Len Ruoxue felt a little dizzy from his spinning. After sighing helplessly, she urged, "Head butler, your decision is final. You don't have time to waste. Don't say I didn't warn you, but if the Lu clan's main family sees your city lord in this state, it's hard to say if he can keep his position." The head butler knew that the other party's words were not without reason. After hesitating for a few seconds, a determined look suddenly flashed across his face. He then walked to the city lord's bed and whispered, "City lord, if I want to cure you, I need a direct relative to change your blood. If you agree, I'll send someone to find Miss Lu Rong." When he said this, the head butler's voice was very soft. The city lord, who was in a semi-conscious state, did not give any other reaction other than the slight twitching of his fingers. Len Ruoxue saw this and quickly said, "Your city lord has already tacitly agreed. Quickly go and find your city lord's daughter." Silent consent? The head butler was speechless. The other party actually dared to say such words. The city lord clearly didn't have any reaction. However, this was not the time to argue with the woman in front of him. At the same time, he did not hesitate and directly ordered the guard who had just passed him the news to bring Miss Lu Rong, who was living in the inn. Chapter 2470, I've missed you so much, too. When the guard heard this, he couldn't help but widen his eyes and ask, "Head butler, what about the people from the main family? What's the arrangement?" Ugh. Only then did the head butler remember that he had actually forgotten about the representative sent by the main family. However, the city lord's current appearance could not be seen by the main family. Otherwise, he might not be able to keep his position. After some thought, the head butler whispered a few words to the guard, and the guard left with a troubled and conflicted expression. Not long after, Lu Rong, who did not know the truth, was brought in. When Len Ruoxue saw Lu Rong, she fixed her gaze on her, and Lu Rong was instantly scared out of her wits. Lu Rong shouted angrily, "Damn you, ugly freak, why are you looking at me? If you dare to look at me again, don't blame me for not being polite." Had this guy forgotten about her? Len Ruoxue was speechless. Looking at Lu Rong's face, it was clear that she didn't remember who she was, and she didn't remember being locked up by her. This person's memory was really not ordinary. However, this was also good. In this way, Lu Rong would naturally not think that she was taking the opportunity to take revenge. In reality, it was excusable that Lu Rong did not recognize Len Ruoxue. For one thing, Lu Rong would only remember the beautiful man. Moreover, after the incident at the city lord's mansion, Lu Rong's mind had been in a state of tension. There was no beautiful man in front of her that could awaken her memory, so she had completely forgotten that she had once locked a group of people in prison. Facing Lu Rong's impoliteness, Len Ruoxue displayed a magnanimous expression. She then turned to the head butler, who had been frowning ever since Lu Rong was brought in, and said, "Head butler, tell the city lord's daughter what she needs to do." The head butler nodded and directly told Lu Rong that he needed her blood to treat the city lord's illness. Lu Rong's expression changed drastically when she heard this and immediately wanted to rush out of the room. However, at this time, the inside and outside of the room were tightly sealed off by the guards arranged by the head butler. Lu Rong could not escape even if she had wings. He had already expected Lu Rong's reaction, so he did not give her a chance to refuse. At this moment, two guards came forward and restrained Lu Rong. "How dare you? I'm the city lord's daughter, and you guys actually dare to treat me like this? Humph. When father wakes up, I'll definitely make him kill you all. Just you guys wait." Lu Rong shouted in anger, her pretty face twisted in anger. However, the head butler wasn't afraid of her threats. He calmly said, "Miss Lu Rong, you've seen the city lord's current state. I hope you can take the big picture into consideration and sacrifice some blood for the city lord. It won't be in vain that the city lord dotes on you so much. What do you think? Although the butler's words seemed to be a question, his tone was unquestionable and certain. However, Lu Rong didn't hear it at all and continued to shout angrily, I have no problem with changing father's blood, but you can't use my blood. Father loves me the most. If he knows how you treat me, he won't let you off. Miss Lu Rong, if it was possible, I wouldn't want to use your blood either. However, who asked you to be the closest blood relative to the city lord? Using other people's blood isn't as effective as yours. The head butler said helplessly. Then shall we use mine? Lu Rong was furious. I can only use yours. The head butler explained patiently. However, Lin Ruoxue did not want to continue watching the two of them argue, so she gave the head butler a look. The head butler understood and glanced at the guard beside Lu Rong who was restraining her. The guard then raised his arm and knocked Lu Rong out. Thanks. Upon seeing this, Lin Ruoxue smiled and said, Head butler, you should have done this earlier. Why are you talking so much nonsense with her? The head butler was silent for a moment. He thought to himself, that's the daughter of the city lord, not some random nobody. Unless it's a last resort, of course I can't use any extreme means. Of course, the head butler was smart enough not to say this out loud. He only looked at Lin Ruoxue expectantly, hoping that she would be able to treat the city lord as soon as possible. Seeing him like this, Lin Ruoxue didn't waste any more time. She ordered the guards to carry Lu Rong to the bed and placed her beside her father. Then, she took out the tools that Qing Ju had prepared for her. Oh! She didn't do things like bleeding often. Therefore, it shouldn't be a big problem for someone to lose their life if their skills weren't good, right? After some thought, Lin Ruoxue decided to say the ugly words again. After she patiently explained the possible accidents that might happen, the head butler's face twitched. He kept nodding his head to urge Lin Ruoxue to hurry up with the treatment. He even expressed that he was already mentally prepared. Tell her not to worry. In reality, if it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of affecting Lin Ruoxue's treatment, he really wouldn't want to be so patient. However, he was well aware that now was definitely not the time to offend Lin Ruoxue. His city lord was still counting on her to make a last resort in a desperate situation. After Lin Ruoxue received the head butler's assurance, she immediately jubilantly inserted a silver needle the size of a pinky finger into the arm of the unconscious Lu Rong. When the head butler saw this, he quickly turned around and covered his face. It's really too terrifying, isn't it? The head butler's little heart couldn't help but tremble at the sight of such a thick silver needle. When he turned around, he was surprised to find that there was no blood coming out of Miss Lu Rong's hand, even though there was a thick silver needle in her hand. This fact surprised him. In an instant, the head butler turned into a curious baby as he stared at Lin Ruoxue's hands without blinking. Acupuncture. Inserting a tube. Not long after, the city lord's body was covered with spikes like a porcupine. Lu Rong's body was also pierced with 5 silver needles, each of which was connected to a transparent tube. The tube connected the city lord and Lu Rong's body, and bright red blood flowed from Lu Rong's body to the city lord's body through the tube. The head butler could not help but hold his breath when he saw this miraculous scene. He did not even dare to breathe loudly for fear of disturbing Lin Ruoxue's treatment of his city lord. In comparison, the demon and the rest were much calmer. While Lin Ruoxue was trying her best to treat the city lord of Chuan City, the extremely bored of them actually took out their poker cards and started playing Fight the Landlord. Of course, this Fight the Landlord was taught to them by Lin Ruoxue. Furthermore, they had only learned it in the past 2 days. The few of them had not completely lost their passion for playing cards. Now that they had free time, they were naturally not willing to let it go. When the head butler unintentionally turned around and saw this scene, his face immediately darkened. Fuck! What were these people doing? Don't you know that it's time to treat the city lord's illness? The head butler was very angry. These people were really too uncouth. However, evildoer and the rest did not care about the butler's feelings. They sincerely felt that they had already given him face by not making any noise during the fight the landlord. It was because of this that they were very calm when faced with the butler's sharp eyes. Chapter 2471, I've missed you so much. 3. His calmness deeply provoked the head butler. At this moment, Leng Ruoxua glanced at the head butler, then suppressed her laughter and said, Head butler, your city lord's illness is much better. I estimate that he should be able to fully recover in 2 or 3 days. Really? Upon hearing this, the head butler could not be bothered to be angry with the evildoer and the others. He quickly turned his gaze to the city lord and saw that the festering part of the city lord's body had already shown signs of healing. However, there was still a stinky pus flowing out from the holes where the silver needles were inserted. The bed sheet was already dirty from the mixture of pus and black-red blood. However, the head butler did not care whether the bed sheet was clean or not. All his thoughts were on the city lord. Only when the city lord's illness was cured would they, the people who depended on the city lord, have a good life. Thinking of this, he turned to look at Lu Rong, only to see that her face was as pale as snow. The chief butler couldn't help but worry. Will Miss Lu Rong be all right? Can you hold on until the city lord recovers? Hearing this, Leng Ruoxua started to pity Lu Rong. From the look on the head butler's face, she knew that he wasn't concerned about Lu Rong's life at all. He was mainly worried that Lu Rong wouldn't be able to hold on until the city lord of Chuan City recovered from his illness, delaying the city lord's recovery. Ai. Poor Lu Rong, who no one loved. Miss Lu is very healthy, she'll be fine. Leng Ruoxua said with a smile after sympathizing with Lu Rong for a while. That's good. When the head butler heard Leng Ruoxua's words, he was relieved. Head butler, City Lord Lu is fine now. We should take our leave. Leng Ruoxua continued. With that, she was prepared to leave with the evildoer and the rest. However, the head butler was not willing to let them go just like that. After all, in his heart, the city lord's illness had not fully recovered. The head butler thought for a moment and immediately said, Everyone, don't be in a hurry to leave. You've saved the city lord, so our city lord mansion will definitely reward you handsomely. Take them to rest. When Leng Ruoxua saw the situation, she knew that she could forget about leaving today. She followed the guards summoned by the head butler calmly and left the city lord's room. The guard brought Leng Ruoxua and the others to the guest house that was only half repaired and told them that they would be staying here temporarily. Then, as if there were evil ghosts chasing after them, he immediately turned and left. We're City Lord Liu's saviors. They're letting us stay here. Uncle Long said in dissatisfaction as he looked at the broken guest house. Giving us a room to live in is already a high standard of treatment. Leng Ruoxua couldn't help but tease him as her beautiful eyes sized up the simple and crude guest courtyard. This guest courtyard was very small. The few of them standing in the courtyard took up almost half of the space in the guest courtyard. Moreover, to put it nicely, the guest courtyard was half repaired, but in fact, there were only 2 rooms that were barely enough for people to live in. But he didn't even prepare a bed for them. This was the rhythm of making them set up tents. Just as Leng Ruoxua was at a loss for words and Uncle Long and the others were feeling indignant, a familiar voice suddenly rang in everyone's ears, I've finally found you. Woo woo, Leng Ruoxua and the rest turned their heads at the same time and happened to see the owner of the voice, Qing Mu, who had been kicked away by Tsang. At this moment, she looked as if she had found her team. Her eyes were filled with tears and she was looking at them with endless resentment. The next moment, Qing Mu pounced towards Leng Ruoxua and the rest like a bird returning to its nest. I've missed you so much. Qing Mu shouted. Then, there was a loud thud and Qing Mu fell to the ground in a sorry state. Originally, Qing Mu had planned to pounce on Leng Ruoxua. However, when he saw the evil man's sinister gaze from the corner of his eye, he immediately changed his direction and pounced on the seemingly kind Uncle Long. Who knew that Uncle Long would dodge, causing Qing Mu to pounce on empty air. At the same time, Qing Mu felt his legs go soft. Then, he was in a tragedy. Wu, Qingmu, who felt embarrassed again, wailed and cried. Leng Ruoxue and the rest felt helpless at this sight. This Qingmu. AI. Although Leng Ruoxue knew very well that Qingmu had fallen because Tsang had done something to him, she did not expect Qingmu to burst into tears. This guy was a member of the Qing family. Would the Qing family allow their descendants to be so disgraceful? Leng Ruoxue couldn't understand. If the Qing family found out about Qing Imu's current state, would he still have a good life in the Qing family? You guys are bullying me. Sob. I'm going to tell my brother. You're all bad guys. At this time, Qingmu was crying and threatening her. When Leng Ruoxue heard this, she was completely speechless. What can you do to us if you tell your brother? Child, even if we tell your ancestor, that old man can't do anything to us, right? Thanks. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue started to doubt Qing Imu's intelligence. However, seeing that Qingmu seemed to be quite confident in her brother, Leng Ruoxue felt embarrassed to strike at his fragile glass heart. However, she really did not want to bother with Qingmu. So, she turned around and pulled the evildoer into an empty room. Uncle Long and the others saw this and followed him in. The poor Qingmu, who was crying like a pear blossom bathed in rain, was ignored by everyone in the blink of an eye. After Leng Ruoxue and the rest entered the room, Qingmu immediately stopped crying. However, the gloominess in his heart only increased. Wu. He was already an adult. Didn't they see him? How could he do this to him? Humph. He was definitely going to tell his brother. At the thought of this, Qingmu got up from the ground and left in a sorry state. Seeing Qingmu leave through the window, the demon glanced at Song, who was occupying Shuai'er's arms, and mocked, who was the one who said that kicking yourself would work. This was just an accident. Next time, I'll kick him further away. It withered. Do you still have a chance next time? The demon laughed evilly. At this time, Qing Imu's voice was heard by everyone again. Brother, it's here. I found them. This voice sounded very excited. When everyone heard it, they looked at each other. He really called for help. However, this helper was actually an acquaintance. Upon seeing the familiar faces, Leng Ruoxue and the rest took the initiative to walk out of the room. Is young Master Qing here to avenge Qingmu? Glancing at Qing Xian, Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. When he heard this voice, Qing Xian quivered. He had heard from Qingmu about Leng Ruoxue's disguise and had no doubt that the person he was talking to was not Leng Ruoxue. He was all too familiar with her tone. Especially with his tone right now, it definitely meant that someone was going to be in trouble. The smart Qing Xian didn't want to be one of those unlucky fellows, so he immediately said, No. I heard that my old friend is also in Chuan City, so I'm here to see him. When Qing Xian said this, his eyes would occasionally sneak a glance at the evildoer standing beside Leng Ruoxue, as well as the snow-white cat in her arms. He was finally relieved when he saw the calm expressions on the two of them. Shuai'er, long time no see. At this moment, Ning Haolan, who had come to look for Leng Ruoxue with Qing Xian, also greeted her with a smile. Leng Ruoxue nodded and could not help but ask curiously, Why are you in Chuan City? It's all because of this idiot. He was caught by Lu Rong and couldn't escape, so he sent me a voice transmission to ask for help. After giving Qingmu a daggers-like look, Qing Xian said with a face full of disappointment. As for Qingmu, under Qing Xian's sinister and fierce gaze, she was as obedient as a little white rabbit. Her eyes were still red, and she did not dare to say a word of rebuttal. He's quite stupid. Leng Ruoxue glanced at Qingmu and nodded in agreement. This time, Qingmu felt even more aggrieved. He realized that he was wrong. You're wrong. Look at his brother's lackey appearance, not to mention avenging him, it would be good enough if he didn't hand him over to the enemy to be slaughtered. Sob. Why was he so miserable? As expected, just as Qingmu thought of this, he heard Qing Xian looking at Leng Ruoxue with a fawning expression. Shuai'er, This brat is idle all day and only knows how to stir up trouble. If he has offended you in any way, you must not be polite. No need to be soft-hearted. Brother. You're my brother. Hearing these words of betraying others, Chengmu wanted to cry to death. This was really bullying. How could he do this? Chengmu couldn't help but look up at the sky and sigh. His heart was infinitely depressed. However, when Leng Ruoxue heard this, she only nodded her head lightly, indicating that she would not stand on ceremony. After that, they started to chat. Leng Ruoxue also found out from Qing Xian why they had come to the city lord's residence. It turned out that the main Lu family had sent people to Chuan City not because they knew that something had happened at the city lord's estate, but because Qing Xian and Ning Haolan had come to the Lu family together after Qing Imyu's arrest. When the Lu family saw that the young masters of the Cheng and Ning families had come to settle the score, they did not dare to ignore it and immediately sent an elder to Chuan City to handle the matter. Before they arrived in Chuan City, Qing Xian and the others inadvertently met Qing Mu, who had been kicked away by Tsang. After hearing Qing Mu personally say that she had been caught and sent to prison, the Lu family elder immediately said that he would give Qing Mu an explanation. Of course, Qing Mu was not stupid enough to tell the elder of the Lu family about her escape from the prison. She only said that she had tried her best to escape from the prison. Later, when they arrived at Chuan City, they found out that the city was under strict security. That was when the Lu family elders found out that something had happened to the city lord's mansion. After learning about this, the Lu clan's elder temporarily split up with Qing Xian and the others. Qing Mu wanted to look for Leng Ruoxue and the others, so she found an excuse to stay in the inn where Leng Ruoxue and the others were staying. Naturally, she also found out from the inn's manager that Leng Ruoxue and the others had come to the city lord's mansion to save the city lord. Chapter 2472:2 Ants 1. When Qing Mu heard the news from the inn manager, he was stunned for a long time. He could not figure out what Leng Ruoxue was trying to do. If he didn't remember wrongly, they couldn't escape responsibility for his injuries, right? He actually went to the city lord's mansion to treat someone's illness. Wasn't this sending sheep into the tiger's mouth? At that time, in his eyes, Leng Ruoxue was just a sheep. As a friend of Leng Ruoxue's, he naturally could not watch Leng Ruoxue and the others be in danger. Hence, when he found out about this matter, he strongly requested his brother to bring him to the city lord's residence to look for her. That was why the scene above had happened. In the city lord's mansion, Qing Mu did not have to search for long before she found Leng Ruoxue and the rest. It was really easy to find as there were many places in the city lord's mansion that were not hidden. However, never in his dreams did he expect that he would be ignored like that. This fact made him quite depressed. The brother that Empress called to support her was actually a traitor. This was definitely a heavy blow to Qing Mu. Unfortunately, at this moment, Leng Ruoxue and the others were only focused on reminiscing about the past. No one paid attention to Qing Imyu's gloominess. By the time they realized it, Qing Mu was already wishing she could hide in a corner and draw circles. You're all bad people. They're all bad people. They saw Qing Mu crouching among the ruins and mumbling non-stop. When Leng Ruoxue and the rest heard this, they did not know whether to laugh or cry. Who are you talking about? Leng Ruoxue chuckled as she asked. Who else could it be? Of course, it's that hateful woman. When he heard someone talking to him, Qing Mu did not even raise his head and answered reflexively. When he realized that something was wrong and raised his head, he saw Leng Ruoxue looking at him with a faint smile. Instantly, he was so frightened that he quivered. That evil woman? Me? Leng Ruoxue asked shamelessly with a smile. No, how could it be you? It was Lu Rong. Right. It's that evil woman, Lu Rong. Chen Muxio's heart was trembling, and she was so scared that she quickly said. Are you going to see Lu Rong? Leng Ruoxue suddenly asked when she heard him mention Lu Rong. Why are you looking at her? Qing Mu blinked her eyes in confusion. If you don't watch it now, you might not be able to in the future. Leng Ruoxua laughed evilly. No way. Then I'll go take a look. Cheng Mu immediately perked up when she heard that. But when he saw City Lord Lu and Lu Rong, he was still shocked even though he had already prepared for the worst. What's wrong with them? In City Lord Lu's room, Cheng Mu's hand trembled as he pointed at the father and daughter, whose bodies were covered with silver needles. He was so scared that he stuttered. Oh my God! Was he still human? He did not know why, but he suddenly sympathized with the father and daughter. Looking at their situation, Cheng Mu really felt that compared to them, he seemed to be considered lucky. When he thought of this, he turned his head carefully to look at Leng Ruoxua, and he became much more well-behaved. These people were not to be offended. He had to be careful in the future. Cheng Mu went to Leng Ruoxua's side and asked with a smile, "Shuai, can we go back now?" He didn't want to stay here any longer. This place was too terrifying. Go back. The head butler didn't allow us to go back, saying that they would only let us go when their city lord is well. More importantly, the city lord's mansion hasn't paid me for my treatment yet. That's why we can't leave now. Leng Ruoxua said calmly. Although her voice was neither too loud nor too soft, the head butler, who was being scolded not far away, could still hear her clearly. Instantly, the head butler could not help but burst into tears. Woo! If he had known that these people were old friends with the young masters of the Cheng and Ning families, he would not have dared to force these people to stay in the city lord's mansion even if he was beaten to death. Now, not only had he been exposed, but the main family had also charged him with the crime of not reporting the information. Thanks the unlucky chief butler, who thought that he could hide the matter flawlessly, now knew that his life in the family would not be easy in the future. In addition, there was the city lord. Even if he was cured, he was afraid that he would not be able to keep his position. As for the young lady, he did not know what would happen to her. However, just based on the fact that the young lady had dared to put the Qing family in prison, the Lu family would not let her off easily in order to give the Qing family an explanation. After thinking clearly about their crimes, the head butler could only plead guilty and try his best to admit his mistakes, hoping that the elder sent by the main family would spare him on account of his good attitude in confessing. Unfortunately, no matter how well he admitted to his crime and how clearly he confessed, the elder sent by the Lu clan did not intend to let him off easily. He could only blame it on his bad luck. After that, the elder of the Lu family apologized to Leng Ruoxua and made it clear that he would pay Leng Ruoxua back as soon as possible. Leng Ruoxua saw that this Lu clan's elder was rather sincere, so she did not make things difficult for him. She only told him to send the reward to the inn, then she left the city lord's residence with the demon and the rest. After hearing some of Leng Ruoxua's glorious deeds from her brother, Cheng Mu thought that he could see Leng Ruoxua show off her might and ruthlessly beat up the Lu family. Unfortunately, his wish did not come true, and he could not help but feel disappointed. When they returned to the inn, Cheng Mu immediately followed Leng Ruoxua and the rest into the room. She asked shamelessly, "Shuai, you're just going to let the Lu family off like this? What else?" Leng Ruoxua looked at Cheng Mu in amusement. She thought to herself, did this guy think that I'm a violent person and want to start a massacre over a small matter? You should teach the Lu family a good lesson. Cheng Mu said matter-of-factly. Didn't I already teach him a lesson? Leng Ruoxua smiled as she reminded. Ah. That counts as one. Cheng Mu was a little speechless. Do you want me to destroy the Lu family? If that's the case, then everyone in the divine realm will treat me as a great devil. Leng Ruoxua said helplessly. Little brat, Shuai knows what she's doing. Don't add to the trouble. At this moment, Qing Xian, who could not stand it anymore, slapped Qing Mu's head and scolded angrily. Brother, you actually hit me? Cheng Mu, who had been beaten up, looked at Qing Xian with an aggrieved expression. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxua couldn't help but ask out of curiosity, are you guys really brothers? Why was there such a huge difference in their personalities? He's my uncle's son. When Qing Xian heard Leng Ruoxua's question, he explained. When Leng Ruoxue heard this, she nodded her head to show that she understood. Shuai, when do you plan to leave Chuan City? Ning Haolan suddenly asked. It could happen at any time. Leng Ruoxue replied honestly. With these two young masters around, the Lu clan would not dare to stop them from leaving the city. Then I'll go with you. Ning Haolan said after some thought. I want to go with you. Qing Xian quickly said, not to be outdone. You? Aren't you going to return to the Qing family? Leng Ruoxue was speechless. The young master of the Qing family was always loitering outside. If the old man from the Qing family knew about this, he would definitely have a bad opinion of her. Chapter 2473:2 Ants, 2, who knew that Qing Xian didn't take the Qing family seriously at all. He said indifferently, why should I go back? Do you want to see someone clamoring to replace me as the young master? What? The moment Leng Ruoxue heard this, the fire of gossip was ignited once more. The others also looked at Qing Xian with curious expressions, hoping that he would answer their questions. Qing Xian looked at everyone's expression and helplessly said, can you guys not be so nosy? You're the one who gave us the chance to gossip. So, you have to tell us the truth. Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly. That's right. That's right. Uncle Long and the others also joined in the fun. All right. I'll explain, all right. The Qing family isn't very peaceful at the moment. Someone is planning to replace me as the young master, but I don't know when their plan will be completed. I don't have the patience to play with them, so I ran away from home. Qing Xian said honestly. Although he was often caught by the old ancestor, now that he had run away from home and was almost a regular meal, the old ancestor was probably used to it. At least this time, he wasn't immediately summoned back as soon as he came out. Under such circumstances, shouldn't you be more at home and perform well? Leng Ruoxue reminded. TSK. Who wants to perform well? I don't really care about the position of the Qing family's young master. Qing Xian said nonchalantly. Ever since he got to know Leng Ruoxue and the rest, he suddenly realized that he was even more unwilling to be bound by that huge family. One must know that he yearned for a free life. You must be giving the head of the Qing family a headache. Leng Ruoxue said. Hearing this, Qing Xian only raised his head arrogantly, putting on a noble and cold look, and then changed the topic to what he had said before. Shuai, when you leave, you must take me with you. Qing Xian was like a puppy that was afraid of being abandoned as he pleaded. All right then. Leng Ruoxue had no choice but to agree. However, she thought to herself, if I bring you along, the Qing clan's head will definitely come to my place to arrest you. Hence, she really could not guarantee how long Qing Xian would stay with them. However, if she wanted to bring Qing Xian along, she might have to bring this idiot, Qing Mu. At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxue's gaze could not help but turn to Qing Mu. When Qing Mu saw this, he immediately went up to Leng Ruoxue and said in a fawning manner, Shuai, you've brought my brother along. Of course, you can't leave me behind, right? What if I say that I'm wrong? Leng Ruoxue teased. Ah. Shuai, you won't be so disloyal, right? Qing Mu's eyes dimmed, and tears slowly welled up in her eyes as she said pitifully. Seeing him in this state, Leng Ruoxue could not take it anymore and said, all right, stop acting pitiful. I'll bring you along, but you have to be obedient. I promise I'll listen to you. Qing Mu said obediently. Thanks. Leng Ruoxue nodded, letting him off the hook. Early the next morning, the Lu clan's elder immediately sent someone to deliver Leng Ruoxue's remuneration for treating City Lord Lu's illness. When she saw that the remuneration was actually almost double what she deserved, Leng Ruoxue could not help but sigh. This Lu clan's elder knew how to conduct himself. In addition, the Lu family's elder had also sent compensation to Qing Mu, allowing him to make a small fortune. The messenger also assured them that Lu Rong would be severely punished by the family, so they could rest assured. On the afternoon of the day they received their remuneration, Leng Ruoxue and the rest left Chuan City under the watchful eyes of the Lu clan's elders. As he watched Leng Ruoxue and the rest leave, the Lu clan elder heaved a long sigh of relief. He thought to himself, I've finally sent these few away. That was close. After Leng Ruoxue and the rest left, they continued to head south along Chuan City. After walking for close to half a month, the group finally returned to the land of demons. When the beasts that stayed behind in the land of evil demons learned that Leng Ruoxue and her group had returned safely, they were all overjoyed. They surrounded Leng Ruoxue and asked her all sorts of questions out of concern. When they learned that Leng Ruoxue and her group had won, they were so happy that they howled at the top of their lungs to show their excitement. Seeing this, Qingmu was even more surprised. He had never expected Leng Ruoxue to have such a good relationship with the beasts of the land of demons. Such a harmonious relationship was almost impossible in his knowledge. However, he had actually seen it with his own eyes today. For a moment, his admiration for Leng Ruoxue was like a surging river, endless. After returning to the demonic land, Leng Ruoxue and the rest returned to their original appearances. When Qingmu saw them, he was completely dumbfounded. No matter how stunning Leng Ruoxue was in the rumors, it was not as real as seeing her with his own eyes. After seeing Leng Ruoxue, he deeply felt that the women he had seen in the past who he thought were beautiful were not even worth showing off. However, he did not dare to have any improper thoughts about Leng Ruoxue. It was because the eyes of the demonic man beside her were too penetrating and too terrifying. Moreover, the demonic man's otherworldly beauty made him feel inferior. Sigh. A man actually looked like this, how were those women supposed to live? However, it was undeniable that the outstanding couple in front of him was a match made in heaven. After secretly observing them for a long time, Qingmu really felt that if anyone dared to come and ruin their perfect couple, he would be the first to disagree. At this moment, he automatically ignored the extra-large lightbulb cat in Leng Ruoxue's arms and turned to look at the Devil's Land with a curious expression, as if he was looking at a grand view garden. The beasts in the land of demons showed a high level of enthusiasm for Qingmu's arrival. Every day, some beasts would bring Qingmu around to play. In just a few days, Qingmu was so happy that she forgot about home. On a certain day, Leng Ruoxue, who was sitting in the garden and chatting with Uncle Long and the others, finally caught up with Qingmu. She could not help but tease, Qingmu, it looks like you've been playing with your heart these few days. Hee hee. No. No way. When Qingmu heard Leng Ruoxue's words, he immediately blushed. In reality, he was just as Leng Ruoxue had said. He was so happy that he had lost his sense of direction. However, he did not dare to let Leng Ruoxue and the others know about his thoughts. Otherwise, what if they were jealous and wanted to chase him away? He hadn't had enough of this place. Since you don't have it, then don't run around in the future. Cultivate well. Look at how weak you are. With your current strength, I'm afraid no one will believe you if you tell them that you're from the Qing family. Leng Ruoxue's beautiful face was filled with disdain. Don't. Sister, please let me go. I don't like to cultivate. When Qingmu heard this, he immediately cried and begged. If he liked to cultivate, he would not have run away from home. Ugh. Back then, he had also run away from home like Qing Xian. However, he did not dare to say this in front of Leng Ruoxue. Otherwise, what if this person decided to send him home on a whim? There were good food and fun things here. He didn't want to go back to the Qing family's cage. I won't go back even if I'm killed. I don't keep idle people here. With your strength, you can't even compare to the beasts in the land of evil demons, and you're not as useful as them. You'll only be a waste of food if you stay here. If the ripple of fog comes to you one day, you'll just be cannon fodder. So, if you really don't want to cultivate, for the sake of your safety, you'd better return to the Qing family. Leng Ruoxue sighed helplessly. Of course, Qing Xian had asked her to say this. Ever since Qingmu had arrived at the Devil's Land, she had been like a wild horse that had lost its reins. She was nowhere to be seen. How could Qing Xian not be anxious? Chapter 2474:2 Ants, 3. Not only that, but Qing Xian also asked her to give Qingmu special training. Evildoer and Azure took the initiative to accept this task and planned to train him and the Peacock King together. Leng Ruoxue thought of the pitiful Peacock King who was locked up in some unknown place by the demon. She felt that it was not a bad idea to arrange for a companion to train with the Peacock King so that he would not be lonely. As such, she would not let Qingmu pass the test so easily. When Qingmu heard that Leng Ruoxue wanted to chase him away, he immediately looked at her pitifully, his eyes glistening with tears. However, Leng Ruoxue was unmoved. She only told him again and again, if he doesn't want to cultivate, send him back to the Qing family. In the end, Qingmu had no choice but to compromise. As soon as Qingmu agreed, the demon immediately moved Qingmu into a small dark room. That room was the one he had locked up the Peacock King in. The Peacock King, who had been locked in the small black room for an unknown amount of time, immediately perked up when he sensed an unfamiliar aura. However, he immediately felt that something was wrong because he was too familiar with one of the auras. Woo, it's that guy. Master's man. After the Peacock King recognized this fact, he cowered and hid in a dark corner, trying to lower his presence. Seeing this, the demon snorted coldly, "What are you hiding for? Get out here." Upon hearing this, Qingmu, who was in darkness, suddenly realized that there was someone else here. Looking through a faint light, Qingmu found that there seemed to be a figure moving in the shadows. She opened her eyes wide curiously to look at the trembling figure, and her face was full of question marks. Who was this person? It looked like he was very afraid of this evildoer. Suddenly, Qingmu seemed to have found a soulmate, who asked him to be quite afraid of evildoers. However, that person seemed to be even more useless than him. After being shouted at by the demon, that person slowly moved his feet and seemed to be very reluctant to reveal his head. Why you're here? What? The question marks on Cheng Mu's face increased. What kind of greeting was this? Get out here. It's been so long, why haven't you grown any courage? The demon said with a look of disdain. The Peacock King was so depressed that he was about to cry. It wasn't that he didn't have the courage, okay? However, he was too afraid of this man. You? Hurry up and come out, I'll introduce you to a new friend. The demon couldn't stand the Peacock King's submissive look and roared again. Peacock King trembled in fear. However, this time, he moved faster and immediately jumped out of the shadows. This is Qingmu, your future partner. He will be trained with you, the demon said to the Peacock King. Oh. Hello, I'm the Peacock King. The Peacock King nodded at Qingmu in a friendly manner. The Peacock King. Qingmu was shocked. He thought that his training partner was human. He didn't expect it to be the Peacock King, or was he just a human named Peacock King? Seeing that Qingmu was looking at him curiously, the Peacock King smiled and added, I am the king of the peacock race. It was really as he thought. Qingmu was overjoyed. Although it was dark here and she couldn't see the Peacock King's appearance clearly, she had heard that the Peacock clan was full of handsome men and beautiful women. The Peacock King in front of her must be quite good-looking. More importantly, he felt that if he could get along well with the king of the peacock race, the Peacock King would be happy and let his own clansmen recognize him as their master or something. That would be quite good. Qingmu was daydreaming happily. His gaze towards the Peacock King became even more fervent. However, his passionate eyes made the Peacock King's heart tremble. He was too familiar with this human's eyes. It was clearly the gaze that the Phoenix King would have when he had designs on him. Woo! Master, save me. Someone has bad ideas about you, little peacock. The Peacock King, who originally wanted to live in peace with Qingmu, was frightened by Mu's fiery eyes. He could not help but be wary of him. He even thought that the human in front of him was a bad guy who was deliberately arranged by his master's man to destroy his relationship with his master. With this thought, he naturally did not have a good expression on Qingmu. However, the overly excited Cheng Mu did not feel the Peacock King's sudden coldness. Instead, he was still immersed in his excitement. Thanks looking at the two people's completely different reactions, the demon's eyes flashed and he laughed evilly. You guys stay here and get to know each other. Your special training will officially begin in 3 days. After saying that, the demon's figure flashed and he left immediately. As soon as the demon left, Cheng Mu immediately went to the Peacock King's side to please him. He looked at the Peacock King with a burning gaze and laughed. Peacock King, we'll be partners from now on. Please take care of me. Go away. Get away from me. After hearing Cheng Mu's words, the Peacock King said without giving her any face. Cheng Mu was dumbfounded. He didn't offend the Peacock King, right? Why did the Peacock King have such an attitude towards him? Cheng Mu, who was puzzled, looked at the Peacock King with an aggrieved face and choked, Peacock King, I really want to be your friend. We will be training together in the future. It is only natural for us to help each other. So, don't keep me at arm's length. I will be very sad if you continue to act like this. Cheng Mu was so submissive because she had been hanging out with the beasts in the land of demons for a few days and more or less understood the nature of the beasts. He knew that many beasts were actually like humans, they could be persuaded by reason but not forced by force. So, he lowered his stance and said some soft words to ensure that he would not go wrong. This was called the strategy of a grieving army. However, it was a pity that the Peacock King thought that Cheng Mu was here to destroy his relationship with his master. Therefore, he had long been wary of Cheng Mu. Therefore, when he heard Cheng Mu's soft and gentle words, he not only did not feel Cheng Mu's sincerity, but he even felt that this human was unscrupulous in order to leave a good impression on him. This was really too detestable. However, Cheng Mu did not know that he had overreached himself and was still trying to please the Peacock King. Cheng Mu kept trying to find out the Peacock King's preferences, but the Peacock King seemed to be indifferent. Although Cheng Mu felt a little helpless about this, it also made him braver. The next 3 days were spent with Cheng Mu's boring questions. In these 3 days, the Peacock King only hummed and laughed in response. He had never answered Cheng Mu's questions directly. This result made Cheng Mu so depressed that he almost scratched the wall. The demon once again descended into the small black room. What he saw was the Peacock King putting on a noble and cold expression, while Cheng Mu was drawing circles in the corner, sighing sadly. He knew that the two of them didn't seem to get along well, but that wasn't what he was concerned about. The demon quickly gathered the two of them together and told them that the special training officially began today. As soon as he finished speaking, the originally dark room instantly lit up. Only then did Cheng Mu see the Peacock King's appearance clearly. She was truly a stunning beauty. Although she couldn't be compared to that devilish man, she was still beautiful enough to make people unable to look away. AI. No wonder the Peacock King was so difficult to deal with. Beauties should have special privileges, regardless of gender. After seeing the Peacock King's appearance, Cheng Mu was relieved that the Peacock King had ignored her. However, the Peacock King still did not give Cheng Mu a good look. When the Peacock King turned his gaze to his master's terrifying man, he was stunned and could not come back to his senses for a long time. How could master, this man, look so handsome? Was he still human? Even the Peacock King, who was quite confident in his own beauty, felt inferior when he saw the heaven-shaking, earth-shattering, and God-weeping beauty of this demon. The demon ignored the Peacock King's stunned expression and announced the rules he had set. Only by defeating the person he had arranged would the two of them have the chance to leave this place. After that, a black figure appeared in front of Cheng Mu and the Peacock King. The figure was wrapped up tightly from head to toe, leaving only a pair of cold eyes outside. Seeing this, Cheng Mu could not help but widen his eyes. This guy's strength is so powerful. She only glanced at him lightly. He felt endless pressure and immediately felt breathless. In particular, the other party's sinister cold eyes made him feel like prostrating himself in worship. Who exactly was this person? Cheng Mu's heart trembled uncontrollably. He was very curious about this person's identity, but he did not dare to ask. Ant. A cold and disdainful male voice rang out. Then, the owner of the voice looked at the demon with a respectful expression and said, "Master, please give these 2 ants to me. I'll let them know what the hell-like training is." "Good. As long as you don't die, you can do anything." The demon irresponsibly left such a sentence and disappeared without a trace. An ant? Was she talking about him? Cheng Mu's face was full of disbelief. There were only these 2 words in his heart. He ignored everything that the evildoer had said before he left because these 2 words were too much of a blow to him. Their Qing clan was a powerful clan with a reputation and status in the divine realm. However, how could he be considered an ant in this person's eyes? This made the proud Qing Mu unable to accept such an insult no matter what. Chapter 2475, The Evildoer's Abduction. 1. Qing Mu was very angry, and the consequences were very serious. The serious consequence of this was that Qing Mu impulsively attacked the man who was tightly wrapped and only left a pair of cold eyes outside. Looking at the weak Qing Mu, who was like a sharp sword, rapidly flying away to avoid the attack, the Peacock King could not help but curl his lips in disdain. He secretly thought in his heart, he really overestimates his own ability. That scary man's subordinate even dared to provoke him. He, who was tactful, could already foresee Cheng Mu's tragic situation. However, he was happy to watch the show. After all, with Cheng Mu, this silly guy, as the first bird to stand out, he believed that his life would be better. Sure enough, when Cheng Mu rushed out and the divine power in his hand was ready to be released, the mysterious man caught a glimpse of Cheng Mu's movements. He did not even dodge. A contemptuous smile appeared in his eyes. Then, he gently lifted a leg and kicked in Cheng Mu's direction. With a bang, the 2 forces collided. After that, the mysterious man in black elegantly retracted his leg. Cheng Mu was like a falling meteor. Before she could shoot out her divine power, she was kicked and flew to the wall behind him. Cheng Mu was in the shape of a Chinese character. After being kicked to the wall, she quickly slid down from the smooth wall. Her entire person fainted from the violent collision. "Wake him up," the mysterious black-robed man ordered coldly. The Peacock King, whose face had already turned pale from fear, nodded his head rapidly. He could tell that this man was not someone he could offend. That was why he would not challenge his authority like Cheng Mu. When the Peacock King received the order, he first walked to Cheng Mu's side and gave him 2 hard kicks to avenge his coveting. Then, he softened his strength and continued to kick him. After a while, Cheng Mu finally woke up from the Peacock King's torture. Cheng Mu, who had just woken up, was still a little confused. However, in a flash, he remembered everything that had happened and immediately glared at the mysterious man in black. However, under the man's cold, knife-like gaze, Cheng Mu's little heart trembled and she became listless. Woo! Where did this pervert come from? He had defeated him with 1 kick. Cheng Mu was very worried, but he did not dare to challenge other people's authority easily. At this time, he suddenly realized that there were a few more footprints on his body. Then, he saw that 1 foot was only a few centimeters away from his clothes. Fuck! He looked up angrily at the owner of his feet, the Peacock King. He thought to himself, I can't afford to offend that perverted man in black, but I can't afford to offend a peacock. After thinking about it this way, Cheng Mu really felt that he needed a punching bag. There were only 3 people present now. One of them was someone he could not beat, and the other was himself. Therefore, the position of punching bag should naturally fall on the Peacock King. Suddenly, Cheng Mu's eyes looked at the Peacock King fervently again. Thanks, he felt that as long as he could defeat the Peacock King, his status would definitely be ranked before the Peacock King in the future. In that case, wouldn't the Peacock King have to listen to everything he said? At that time, not to mention ordering the Peacock King to give him a peacock for him to recognize him as his master, the Peacock King might even recognize him as his master under his domineering aura. Cheng Mu was having a sweet dream. When the Peacock King received the message from Cheng Mu's eyes, the unhappiness in his heart immediately rose to another level. He did not withdraw his foot in time because Cheng Mu suddenly woke up. This time, he did not intend to withdraw it immediately. Instead, he kicked Cheng Mu's body again. This time, he was provoking him. "Aya! You're quite bold." Seeing the Peacock King like this, Cheng Mu was so happy that he wanted to roar out. He had come to the door himself. Cheng Mu, who was overjoyed and hot-headed, had completely forgotten that he could not see through the Peacock King's cultivation. This could only prove that the Peacock King's strength was above his. However, under such circumstances, he could not think too much. He was bent on subduing the Peacock King and finding an honest and obedient beast for himself. Cheng Mu had completely lost his mind with this thought. He looked at the Peacock King as if he was a high-grade crystal mine, and his eyes were burning with fire. However, the Peacock King's eyes were full of disdain. However, Cheng Mu ignored this disdain. After all, in his eyes, beasties should be this kind of noble and cold type. He would not like a beastie that was too casual. The more Cheng Mu looked at the Peacock King, the more he liked him. His desire for the Peacock King was like a kitten living in his heart. It was so itchy that he scratched his heart and liver. He had a strong desire to subdue the Peacock King. He did not think much and immediately pounced on the Peacock King. The Peacock King, who was already mentally prepared, naturally would not let him succeed so easily. However, he also did not want to let him go. In an instant, the two of them started to fight. Not only did they fight with their fists and legs, but their Shen power also dazzled everyone. The mysterious man in black, who was watching their interaction coldly, did not stop the two of them from fighting in front of him. However, the corner of his mouth under the mask could not help but twitch. These two guys were really. He didn't know when the people of the divine realm had become so barbaric. They even used their fists and legs in a fight. This had greatly subverted his understanding of the people of the divine realm. However, he was only surprised for a moment before he calmed down. In his hometown, he had seen a lot of barbarians who used their fists and kicks, so he didn't really care about the fancy fists and kicks of these two ants in front of him. But what he didn't know was that the reason why these two people used divine power and fought in close combat was mostly because they had learned from his master. Whether it was the Peacock King or Cheng Mu, both of them had enjoyed the freakish treatment of fists and legs, which had left a deep impression on them until today. From the moment they were beaten up, the two of them had secretly vowed that in the future, when they fought with others, they would also try the feeling of punching and kicking people. However, they had only learned the tip of the iceberg of the evildoer's skills. They had not learned the essence of the evildoer's skills. In the eyes of the mysterious man in black, the fight between the two of them was just a show of fancy moves that could not be put on stage. After watching for a while, the mysterious man in black could not help but feel a little impatient when he saw that the two of them had yet to decide the winner. The people of the divine realm were really weak. There was still no winner after such a long time. It seemed that he had a long way to go. The man in black sighed. He had a general understanding of the strength of these two people. However, with their mediocre talents, he was more or less worried. He was very afraid that he would not be able to complete his master's task and would disappoint his master. No. He was the famous devil instructor of the 9 Nether prison. No matter what, he couldn't let two weak people from the divine realm ruin his reputation. With this thought, the mysterious man in black's momentum was greatly boosted. As the battle between the Peacock King and Cheng Mu went deeper, the man in black, who was known as the Devil Instructor, had already formulated a detailed plan to improve their strength in his heart. This also decided the dark and gloomy life of the two. Chapter 2476, The Evildoer's Abduction, 2. However, at this moment, the two of them still didn't know what kind of life they were about to face. The two of them were completely focused on the battle, determined to determine the winner. After a long time, the Peacock King, who was slightly stronger than Cheng Mu, won by a small margin. However, Before he could be happy, he heard the mysterious man in black say with disdain, "Ants are really ants, they're really useless. You took so long to defeat your opponent." Hearing this, the Peacock King was completely listless. Sob. Could he be blamed for this? He wasn't a beastie who was good at fighting, so he definitely didn't have enough combat experience. So, wasn't it understandable that he had fought for a long time? However, it was clear that the mysterious black-robed man was someone who only cared about the results. It was impossible for him to understand the Peacock King's thoughts. This also destined the Peacock King to be disappointed. However, before the Peacock King could display his sorrowful mulberry, he heard the mysterious man in black say, "I've decided, your training load will be twice as much as this humaness." Double the amount? Was he talking about him? The Peacock King, who had his head lowered, did not dare to raise his head to confirm that these words were directed at him. Thus, he could only deceive himself and pretend to be an ostrich. However, how could the black-clothed man allow him to act dumb? After seeing that the Peacock King was acting dumb, the black-clothed man directly called out, "Peacock King, your training load will be double that of this useless human." The Peacock King was silent for a moment. He couldn't help but sigh to the sky. Oh heavens! Why was that? Immediately after, his face was covered in tears. Since he could no longer pretend to be an ostrich, should he accept this fact? The Peacock King became even more worried and blamed Ching Mu for the treatment he received. If this guy didn't want to fight with him, why would the man in black complain about his slow speed and increase the training volume? Sob. He felt so wronged. This was definitely an undeserved calamity. The Peacock King felt that he had been implicated by Ching Mu and was even more unhappy with him. However, the mysterious black-clothed man didn't give the Peacock King too much time to let his imagination run wild. With a slight wave of his hand, the Peacock King and Ching Mu immediately separated a certain distance. Then, both of them heard the mysterious man in black say, "Your training starts now." Ah! It's starting now. The depressed Ching Mu was not mentally prepared at all. He was still silently licking his wound, so when he suddenly heard the black-shirt man's words, Ching Mu immediately panicked. Could he wait for him to finish healing before he started? Ching Mu was begging in his heart. The defeat in the battle with the Peacock King was a huge blow to him. He had not even recovered from that battle. He was not ready yet. It was a pity that the man in black would not give him the chance to prepare. Ching Mu did not dare to say what he was thinking, mainly because he did not have the chance to. As soon as the man in black finished speaking, two more men in black appeared in front of him. Like the previous man in black, the two men who appeared only revealed a pair of cold eyes and attacked Ching Mu without a word. The Peacock King was facing the same situation. The room was in chaos. As the Peacock King and Ching Mu fumbled to avoid the attacks of the two men in black, the voice of the mysterious man in black from before entered his ears again. "They are your training opponents. You can only move on to the next stage of training when you defeat them. Otherwise, you will have to fight forever." After saying this, the mysterious man in black disappeared just as suddenly as he had come. Peacock King and Ching Mu, who had heard this at the same time, did not know how to react. At this moment, they could not think too much. Although the two black-robed men in front of them were on par with them in strength, they were fighting 2 against 1. Therefore, the two of them could only hide in confusion. They could not even touch the corner of their opponent's clothes. This fact made the two of them extremely depressed. Thanks as the battle went on, Peacock King and Ching Mu suddenly realized that the original room had been separated. There was a transparent wall between the two of them. With this wall, although the two of them could see each other's battle, they could not touch each other. As such, even if the two of them wanted to give up on their previous enmity, they wouldn't even have the chance to fight hand to hand. The two of them had no choice but to accept their fate. The endless battle officially took place in the mysterious room. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue, who was being intimate with the evildoer in the garden, saw a sly smile on the evildoer's lips. She could not help but raise her brows and asked curiously, "What's wrong, demon?" "Hee hee. It's just that the training I gave Peacock King and Chengmu has already started," the demon said calmly. "Oh. Their strength isn't high, so don't play with them to death." Leng Ruoxue could not help but remind him. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing," the demon laughed. His eyes flickered as he changed the topic and asked, "Shuer, do you want to come with me to the 9 Nether prison?" Upon hearing this, Leng Ruoxue was momentarily stunned. 9 Nether prison. Could she go now? Seeing that Leng Ruoxue was silent, the demon continued, "Didn't you say that you were going to send some people to the 9 Nether prison to enjoy themselves? Let's go there today." Today? Leng Ruoxue was shocked. Since when did this evildoer become a man of action? She was not mentally prepared at all. Although 9 Nether prison was the territory of evildoers, she always felt like an ugly daughter-in-law visiting her in-laws' home, which made her a little timid. Moreover, there were still many opponents waiting for her in the divine realm. Was it all right for her to leave the divine realm now? These things also made her hesitate. She had thought of sending Black One and the others to the 9 Nether prison to enjoy themselves, but she had no intention of going there herself. However, facing the demon's expectant eyes, she couldn't refuse no matter what. Sob. What should she do? Seeing that Leng Ruoxue was in a dilemma, the demon's fiery heart felt as if it had been doused with a sea of ice shards. However, he was not a man who was easily defeated by difficulties, so he quickly regained his spirits and planned to persuade Shuer to go with him. However, before he could persuade her, he heard an angry voice ring in their ears, "Don't go. Nyo. I won't allow you to go to the Netherworld jail. Why can't you?" Hearing this, the demon was furious. He couldn't bear to get angry at Shuer, but why would he care about a cat? The divine realm needs Nyo very much now, so Nyo can't leave. Azure said confidently. "Oh, really? But I also need Shuer. The prisoners in our hands also need to be sent to the 9 Nether prison to enjoy their lives, so Shuer has to come with me." The evildoer's reason was also very good, and he clearly expressed that he needed Shuer to accompany him. Chapter 2477, The Evildoer's Abduction, 3, You're not a child. Azure said angrily. The divine realm isn't like that either. Don't tell me that you want Shuer to duel with the Mist Ripple right now. The demon said with a face full of ridicule. Unless Tsung he could make a move, otherwise, the current Shuer would not be a match for Fog Ice. However, if he wanted them to make a move, he would have to suffer the punishment of the laws of heaven and earth. He knew that Shuer would never allow this. Nyo needs to improve her strength. Besides, don't those prisoners have a place to go? I don't think we need to send them to the 9 Nether prison. It's the same to leave them in the divine world. Tsung quibbled. How can that be the same? If we leave them in the divine world, they might be saved by Wu Xian at any time. However, if we lock them in the 9 Nether prison, Wu Xian will have to pay a great price if he wants to help us. Therefore, it is the safest to lock them in my territory. What do you think, Shuer? As the demon spoke, he shifted his gaze to Leng Ruoxue and asked her directly. There's no need for Shuer to say. If you're afraid it's not safe, it's the same to lock them in the God-protecting pagoda. Tsang didn't even give Leng Ruoxue the chance to speak and rushed to speak. Seeing the two of them arguing endlessly over this, Leng Ruoxue was so conflicted that her head hurt. Don't fight anymore, she said helplessly after some thought. Why don't you draw lots to decide? Drawing lots? The two of them looked at each other, but they both felt that this was a good idea, so they nodded in agreement. And the person who drew the lots was naturally Leng Ruoxue. The two of them quickly made several identical bamboo sticks and mixed them together. Then, they stared at Leng Ruoxue with anticipation. Faced with the two's expectant gazes, Leng Ruoxue instantly felt immense pressure. After thinking for a while, Leng Ruoxue still hadn't decided which stick to pick. This made Evil Demon and Azure a little anxious. The two of them naturally hoped that Len Ruoxue would pick the place they provided. Shuai, hurry up. The demon couldn't help but urge. Yeah, girl, quickly smoke one. Azure also urged. Let's make this clear first. No matter where you get chosen, you can't fight. Len Ruoxue reminded him worriedly. Yes, yes. Evildoer and Cold nodded in tacit agreement. After that, Len Ruoxue closed her eyes and reached out to feel around the stone table. In the end, she chose one of the pillars. Without waiting for Len Ruoxue to look at it, Evildoer and Sung impatiently snatched the bamboo stick from Len Ruoxue's hands. After looking at it, Evildoer's face revealed a smile, while Sung's little face instantly darkened. Seeing their reactions, Len Ruoxue knew the result without even looking. AI. It seemed that this was all fate. This ugly daughter-in-law of hers still had to visit her in-law's house. Even though Len Ruoxue was still a little timid at this moment, she quickly forced herself to calm down. After he told Uncle Long and the others about this, they were petrified. 9 Nether Prison. It was the legendary hell. Apart from the natives of the 9 Nether Prison, only the dead or gods could go there. Speaking of which, they were also quite curious about that place, but they didn't know if the Dark Lord would be willing to bring them along. Everyone had a certain level of tacit understanding regarding this matter. After carefully explaining their thoughts to Len Ruoxue was so happy that she almost jumped up. She knew that Uncle Long and the others would not let her down. In fact, when she told Uncle Long and the others about this, she had been hoping that they would join in the fun. This would give her courage, wouldn't it? Otherwise, she would feel extremely uneasy in her heart. However, since Uncle Long and the others had suggested it, she did not dare to casually agree. Otherwise, if the evildoer were to get angry, she would have to think of ways to coax him. With a fawning smile, Len Ruoxue turned to look at the evildoer, using her eyes to seek his opinion. The demon saw how cautious Shuai was, afraid that he would be angry. He couldn't help but laugh in his heart. He didn't expect that Shuai, who was always fearless, would be so scared when he heard that he was going to take her to the 9 Nether Prison. However, it was rare to see Shuai like this. Therefore, the demon decided to enjoy it for a while before telling her the result. Just like that, the demon's eyes were fixated on Len Ruoxue. Even when Len Ruoxue was trembling and her hair was standing on end, the demon did not say a word. Thanks seeing this, Len Ruoxue couldn't help but feel aggrieved. Sob. As a man and the Dark Master of the 9 Underworlds, the evildoer could never understand how nervous and timid a woman who was cultivated from an ordinary human being would be when facing her in-laws. The fear that the other party would not like her could not be controlled and would grow in her heart. Len Ruoxue was experiencing this feeling right now. In fact, when she was still an ordinary human in her previous life, many women around her would change their expressions at the mention of their in-laws, so she was more or less affected. She knew that it was not easy to deal with her in-laws, and she did not have such experience. As a result, she naturally fell into the strange circle of fear of her in-laws. She even forgot that her man was the master of a world, born from chaos, and was naturally different from ordinary people. Who would dare to show her attitude? However, at this time, the demon had no idea where the fear in Shuai's heart came from. Even if Tsung knew, he had no intention of reminding her. What he was thinking was that he would not tell that damn demon why Shuai was so unwilling when she heard that she was going to the 9 Nether Prison. It'll just let him misunderstand that Shuai doesn't want to go. It had to be said that Tsung's little plan had succeeded. Even though the evildoer could see Len Ruoxue's cowardice, he did not know the reason. However, the evildoer's heart was too strong and did not take this matter too seriously. Naturally, he would not be angered by such a small matter. At most, he would be a little depressed. After a long time. After staring at Len Ruoxue for a long time, the evildoer who had almost driven Len Ruoxue mad finally nodded and said, "Since everyone is interested, let's go and take a look." After all, such an opportunity is hard to come by. It was far more than rare. If they didn't know the mistress of the dark world, they wouldn't have been able to go anywhere. Everyone was secretly thinking to themselves. They were very excited that the demon was finally willing to take them to visit the 9 Nether prison. However, even though he had decided to go there, he could not leave immediately. First of all, he had to make arrangements for the land of demons, right? Secondly, he had to make arrangements for Qing Xian and the others who didn't know about the demon's identity, right? Once again, Shen Nua and the rest also expressed their opinions on the slaves they were about to lose. The matters in the demonic land were very easy to arrange, and the requests of Shen Nua and the others were also satisfied because they wanted to go there to take a look. Thus, Len Ruoxue only told them that there would definitely be no shortage of people to test medicine for them in the future, and that all the captives would be given priority for them to choose first. They immediately agreed without any backbone. However, Qing Xian and a few others who didn't know the identity of the evildoer were not easy to send away. In reality, Shen Nua and the others didn't know the demon's identity at the start. However, after spending so much time together, Len Ruoxue didn't hide the demon's identity from them on purpose. After all, those few fellows had already made up their minds to stick to them, including Jiang Ning, who had joined them the latest. It was impossible to get rid of them, so there was naturally no need to hide it from them. However, Len Ruoxue was hesitant to tell Qing Xian. This was mainly because of his identity. On the contrary, Len Ruoxue was not worried about Ning Haolan, who should also be in the dark. After all, with her godfather around, the Nings would find out sooner or later. After thinking for a long time, Len Ruoxue asked for the evildoer's opinion. After knowing that the evildoer did not care if his identity was known by them, Len Ruoxue decided to tell them the truth when necessary. Otherwise, she really did not know how to send them off. Furthermore, she had a good understanding of Qing Xian's character and knew that he was not a big-mouthed person. After making her decision, Len Ruoxue went to look for Qing Xian and Ning Haolan. She went straight to the point and told them that she and the others would be going out soon, and asked them about their plans. Qing Xian and Ning Haolan looked at each other and asked, "Shuer, you're not planning to bring us along?" The two of them were not stupid. They knew that there must be a reason for Len Ruoxue to ask such a question. Hence, they did not try to be pretentious and were rather direct with their questions. When Len Ruoxue heard this, she said with some difficulty, "It's not impossible to bring you guys along, but that place might not be the place you want to go." Len Ruoxue's words were rather reserved. From what she knew, other than Uncle Long and the others who liked to join in the fun, no normal person would be filled with yearning for that place. "What is it?" Ning Haolan couldn't help but feel curious. Qing Xian also looked like a curious baby. The two of them stared at Len Ruoxue, their faces full of questions. "We're going to hell." "Oh. It's the 9 Nether prison that you know of." Len Ruoxue stated her destination calmly. As expected, the two handsome men, who were calm at the start, were petrified. After an unknown period of time, the two of them slowly regained their senses. Qing Xian looked at Len Ruoxue as if he was looking at a monster. His eyes widened as he said in shock, "Shuer, do you know what you're saying? That's a place only the dead can go. Do you want to take us to commit suicide together?" Chapter 2478, Taking this woman, 1, Qing Xian was very frightened. He even started to let his imagination run wild. Could it be that Shuer had been triggered by something he didn't know about? Otherwise, how could he have such a terrifying thought? When he thought of this possibility, his gaze towards Len Ruoxue suddenly turned into one of sympathy, causing Len Ruoxue to not know whether to laugh or cry. However, Ning Haolan wasn't as stupid as he was, and naturally wouldn't think the same way as Qing Xian. Besides, Ning Haolan was rather calm and didn't say a word. He believed that Shuer would definitely have more to say. "We don't need to commit suicide as a group. The evildoer will take us there." Len Ruoxue sighed and said helplessly. She was a little impressed with Qing Xian's imagination. It was really too powerful, wasn't it? How can he take us to the 9 Nether prison? To kill us? Qing Xian couldn't help but ask again. Since it wasn't a suicide, then he probably killed her, right? Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue was even more speechless. Why couldn't this devilish brat think of something better? Although he was curious, he could just wait for her answer after asking. Why did he have to add on a sentence that made people gnash their teeth? What was he trying to do? Not only was Leng Ruoxue speechless at Qing Xian's imagination, but Ning Haolan was also speechless after hearing Qing Xian's words. His expression seemed to say, I don't know this person. It was too embarrassing, wasn't it? Don't worry, he won't kill us. None of us need to die. This time, Leng Ruoxue let out a heavy sigh before speaking. Then tell me, how do we get there? Qing Xian still wanted to ask. Leng Ruoxue rolled her eyes at Qing Xian and tried her best to calm herself down. She then said, didn't I say that the evildoer would take us there? She didn't know if she didn't make herself clear or if Qing Xian didn't understand, but Leng Ruoxue felt that she had already told Qing Xian and Ning Haolan that evildoer would bring them to the Nine Nether prison. However, Qing Xian's question made her go crazy. All right. She admitted that they were not on the same page and that she had deliberately not made her words too clear. However, she had never expected that Qing Xian's intelligence would suddenly drop to such a low level, only thinking about the problem of whether he would die or not. How could they go to the Nine Nether prison? Of course, he would walk there. At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxue smiled evilly and added, we will walk to the Nine Nether prison. I've made myself clear, haven't I? She was deliberately not telling them the identity of the evildoer. So what? Leng Ruoxue secretly complained to herself willfully. With that, Leng Ruoxue ignored the two dumbfounded creatures and turned around to leave. It was a long time after Leng Ruoxue had left that the two of them finally regained their senses. Qing Xian said with a depressed look, Shuer still hasn't said how to get there. She said, let's go. Ning Haolan said softly, frowning. In fact, he was also depressed. He felt that Shuer was deliberately teasing them. Moreover, he also felt that Shuer had not only wanted to tell them this. She might have been angered by that idiot Qing Xian, which was why she only said, let's go, in the end. As for how she would go, she did not say a single word. At that thought, Ning Haolan couldn't help but glance at the confused Qing Xian and sigh helplessly. This guy looks pretty smart usually, but why does he seem so dumb in front of Shuer? In the end, Ning Haolan only said to Qing Xian, I want to take a look at the Nine Nether prison. He patted his butt and left. At this moment, Qing Xian finally reacted and shouted, then I'll go too. Thanks, forget it. No matter how he went, he should be able to go to places that others could go to. With that thought, he decided to immediately tell Shuer his decision. After Leng Ruoxue left the two of them, she walked to the garden with a dejected look on her face. She then sat down on the empty seat beside the evil demon. Seeing that Leng Ruoxue was in a bad mood, the evil demon could not help but ask, what, did my identity scare them? No, I didn't tell the two of them who you were. Leng Ruoxue huffed angrily. After saying this, she repeated what Qing Xian had said to the evildoer. She strongly expressed that she was angered by Qing Xian's words, so she did not mention the evildoer's identity at all. The demon couldn't help but burst into laughter after hearing this. Leng Ruoxue rolled her eyes at him and said in an unpleasant tone, is this funny? Isn't it funny? The demon held back his laughter and asked. Based on his understanding of Qing Xian, it was not strange for him to ask such a question. Moreover, he believed that Qing Xian's original intention should be to find out how he could take them to the Nine Nether prison. However, that kid did not realize that there was anything wrong with his words. As such, he naturally angered Shuer. After looking at Shuer's angry face for a while, the demon really felt that he should reward Qing Xian. Who asked Shuer to be even more beautiful when she was angry? He really couldn't get enough of it. The demon couldn't get enough of it and kept staring at Leng Ruoxue. In the end, Leng Ruoxue was scared out of her wits. While there was no one around, Leng Ruoxue wanted to change the topic, so she grabbed the demon's arm and asked softly, Demon, tell me the truth. Why do you want me to go to the 9 nether prison with you now? She didn't believe that the evildoer would want to take her there for no reason. There must be something wrong. The evildoer must be going back, but he was worried about her, so he wanted her to go with him. It must be like this. Didn't I say that I was going to send those captives to the 9 nether prison? I don't want to go alone, so I want you to accompany me. The demon laughed after hearing Leng Ruoxu's words. You think he'll believe you? Leng Ruoxua deliberately put on a straight face and said unhappily. Then what do I have to do to make you believe me? The demon looked at Leng Ruoxua helplessly. Is there something in the 9 nether prison that you have to go back and deal with? Leng Ruoxua squinted her beautiful eyes as she voiced her guess. If I said nothing happened, would you believe me? The demon asked with a calm smile. What do you think? Leng Ruoxua's tone was a little unfriendly. You'll believe me if I say so. The demon said confidently. All right. You're ruthless. Leng Ruoxua glared at the evildoer, her beautiful face filled with helplessness. The demon laughed smugly. Seeing his expression, Leng Ruoxua was even more certain that something must have happened in the 9 nether prison. However, since the demon was not willing to say anything, she would not ask. Anyway, if something serious had really happened, the demon would not be able to hide it from them once they reached the 9 nether prison. Schwa. I want to go with you. Just as Leng Ruoxua was thinking about how to punish this detestable evildoer, Qing Xian's voice rang in their ears from afar. Soon after, Qing Xian's men arrived and looked at Leng Ruoxua with anticipation.